I'm Maria Bartiromo, and it is Monday, April 13th. Your top stories right now, 6 a.m. on the East Coast. A U.S. naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz begins today at 10 a.m. Eastern, as President Trump says the ceasefire is holding despite talks between the U.S. and Iran ending with no deal over the weekend. And President Trump walked me through next steps in an exclusive interview yesterday.
We're going to be blockading. It'll take a little while, but it'll be effective pretty soon. They want to have nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons. We have boats pouring up to the United States. They'll be filling them up, and they'll be leaving, and they're going to be packed with the best oil you can get.
So if they do not give up that effort, is that the plan? Will you further destruct Iran?
Yeah, I will. If they don't give that plan up, yeah. I'm not in huge hurry. What we want to do is we'll open up the strait.
The commander-in-chief on the talks with Iran, relations with NATO, his upcoming meeting with China's Xi Jinping, and the price of oil ahead of the midterm elections. All coming up right here, straight ahead. I'll be speaking with the president once again in an exclusive interview for this program. Catch it Wednesday morning right here. Don't miss it. 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. The president will join Mornings with Maria. Markets this morning are lower. Take a look at futures, indicating another triple-digit decline this morning for stocks. The Dow Industrial's down 260 right now, 0.5%. The S&P down 42, and the Nasdaq lower by 164. Friday, markets finished this way. Of course, after a hot CPI report on Friday, the Dow was down 269, but the Nasdaq was higher by 80 points as first quarter earnings season begins this week and Congress returns from recess. Let's check the price of oil right now, which has been rising in the overnight session. Brent right now is up at 7 2/3% at 102.44. Crude oil right now up 8% at 104.35. The price of crude once again surging. Interest rates, meanwhile, look like this as we are waiting on Federal Reserve Chairman Kevin Warsh's confirmation hearing. The yield on the 10-year at 4.33%. That is up 0.3 basis points. The hearing apparently still on hold, now reportedly delayed by paperwork. Plus, big bank earnings out this week, including Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citigroup, and many others. There's a look at the major banks right now in the pre-market. And on Capitol Hill, lawmakers are returning from recess this morning to confront the DHS shutdown, the reconciliation bill to come by June, and the president's 2027 budget request. Also ahead, Democrat Congressman Eric Swalwell dropping out of the California gubernatorial race over sexual misconduct allegations, as some members of Congress are threatening now to expel him altogether. And leading gubernatorial candidate Steve Hilton clinches President Trump's endorsement. His plans right here, coming up. Joining the conversation all morning long this morning, former CIA covert operations officer Mike Baker is here. Michael Lee strategy founder Michael Lee is here. And Mornings with Maria is live right now. And we kick it off with the hot topic of the hour. I spoke with President Trump yesterday in an exclusive for Sunday Morning Futures on the current state of affairs in the Strait of Hormuz after U.S. talks with Iran and Pakistan ended with no deal. Take a look. Mr. President, can you explain to us what is going on right now with the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, we're going to be blockading. It'll take a little while, but it'll be effective pretty soon. And we had meetings yesterday. They, as you said, lasted 21 hours. That was a long meeting. We had some very, very good representatives, as you know, J.D. and Steve and Jared. So we were well represented, but we didn't get there on the important issue. They want to have nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons. I've been saying that for 30 years. I would never allow that to happen before I was in politics. And that country will not have nuclear weapons. Most countries shouldn't be allowed to have, but that country will not have nuclear weapons.
So, Mr. President, was that the red line there? Can you explain to us what went on in these talks? What did the United States ask of Iran, and how did they react?
Well, they reacted. You know, it was very interesting. It started off weak. They came in like they had the cards, but they don't have the cards. Their army, their whole military is obliterated. The whole place is obliterated. And, you know, as you know, levels of leaders are gone. They're literally gone. Khomeini's gone. The whole thing is gone. The whole place is gone. They have one thing that they can do. They can say, well, gee, we're going to put a mine someplace in just a mine. We'll drop 1 mine, 2 mines, 10 mines. And that will, if you have a ship that costs $1 billion, you say, well, I'd prefer not getting whacked by a mine, losing my ship, or damaging it badly, at least. And so that's a little bit of a thing that they can do, and that it's military might and military power don't do it, but, it's extortion, and they're extorting the world. We don't get our oil from there. We have so much oil. We have, and one thing you said, and I don't know if anybody heard it well, but we have boats pouring up to the United States. They'll be filling them up, and they'll be leaving, and they're going to be packed with the best oil you can get, light, sweet crude. They're going to have the best oil that you can get. But so that's interesting, and it's great because we have a lot of oil. We don't get any. I mean, literally last year it was 1%. We did that as a favor. We don't need this Strait. But other countries do. And I will tell you, while we're on the subject, we're very disappointed with NATO. We're very, very disappointed that they didn't come. Now they want to come and they want to help with the Strait, and it won't take long to clean it out. So we're going to clean out the Strait, and they'll be able to use the Strait in not too long a distance. But we had a very intensive negotiation, and toward the end it got very friendly, and we got just about every point we needed, except for the fact that they refused to give up their nuclear ambition. And that's the only point, frankly, to me. That was the most important point by far.
And I want to ask you about that, and I will get to NATO as well. But, Mr. President, you wrote on Truth Social this morning saying that we will begin the process of blockading any and all ships trying to enter or leave the Strait of Hormuz. And at some point, we will reach an all being allowed to go in and all being allowed to go out basis. Right. So tell us what you're trying to accomplish with this blockade,
all in,
sir.
All out. Yep. It's called all in and all out. There'll be a time when we'll have them all come in and all come out, but it won't be a percentage. It won't be a friend of yours, like a country that's your ally or a country that's your friend. It's all or nothing, and that'll be that won't be in too long a distance. No, we're just bringing the ships up. We got a lot of ships, so we're bringing them up. We think that numerous countries are going to be helping us with this also, but we're putting on a complete blockade. We're not going to let Iran make money on selling oil to people that they like and not people that they don't like, or whatever it is. It's going to be all or none, and that's the way it is. And it'll be you saw what we did with Venezuela. It'll be something very similar to that, but at a higher level. And
Mr. President, you say that there may be a mine out there somewhere that nobody knows about but them, and this is world extortion. How will the United States ensure that the mines are removed in the Strait of Hormuz?
So we have minesweepers there now. We have highly sophisticated underwater minesweepers, which are the latest and the greatest, but we're also bringing in more traditional minesweepers. And so I understand is the UK and a couple of other countries are sending minesweepers. A lot of countries don't have minesweepers. Think of it. They had 28 mine droppers. What country has 28 mine droppers? 28 boats to drop mines. What country? They've been completely obliterated. They no longer. So we knocked out their entire Navy. They have 158 ships. They have 28 mine droppers. Every single one of them is at the bottom of the sea. Can you believe it? We did that in 4 days. Their Air Force is gone. Their if you look, anti-aircraft. All of their radars out. Anti-aircraft is their defensive program is all knocked out. They don't have anything. And you know the sad part is, and I can't say this is for you. We knocked out everything, including their leaders. Their military is gone. Everything's gone. Their missiles are down to a trickle by comparison. You know, we knocked out thousands of missiles. We knocked out hundreds of places where the missiles are built, different parts. They're pretty much gone. Probably they say 85, 82%, 85%. Who knows what it is, but we knocked them out. We knocked out where they make the drones, and the drones are less effective now. And also we have new machinery to kill the drones. You saw that. The computerized bullets, they call it. And also...
What's up, everybody? Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for being here. I'm going to continue to let this play. I paused it. This was from just a little while ago. Drop something in the chat if you want me to check out. We're going to talk about China today.
Lasers. The laser melts the drone. It's a beautiful thing to see. So we have a lot of stuff. But think of it. We win this thing conclusively. Even yesterday they were saying, no, it was a complete obliteration. And when you read the New York Times, you think they're doing well. Oh, they're fighting very hard. It wasn't a hard battle. This was a very easy battle militarily. But when somebody says, we're going to drop a mine in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz,
international waters,
not much you can do to persuade a ship owner that has $1 billion ship that we're going to take a trip up the strait. Now, yesterday, you probably saw, we sent 2 highly sophisticated, beautiful, brand new destroyers right through the middle of the strait. And nobody did anything to us because what we do is we follow the...
Iran is saying that they chased us off. What do you think?
We follow the weapon back. So it follows back and it knocks out the people on the other side. Literally within 3 minutes, they're knocked out. The technology is unbelievable. But we don't know whether or not they do, whether or not they put mines. They didn't talk about it yesterday. My inclination is to have a few. And I will tell you, it was a good meeting yesterday, really a good meeting, except for one problem. And it's 95%. They want to have nuclear weapons. It's not going to happen.
And this is a key point, Mr. President. For those people out there who have not been following it as closely, can you explain to those people why it was critical for the United States to go into Iran? Can you articulate what was behind that move that was so important for the U.S. to go into Iran?
Yeah, so easy. The easiest question you've asked me so far. They can't have nuclear weapons. They have nuclear. They want to enrich what they have. They want to enrich more. As you know, we knocked out with the B-2 bombers. Had we not...
I'll go ahead and tell you the facts here. All right. Iran holds 6,000 kilograms of low enriched uranium. That's 5% enriched. They turned that into 180 kilograms of medium enriched, which is 20%. But now they have 440 kilograms of highly enriched, which is 60% or higher. 90% is nuclear bomb. Okay, 60% is near weapons grade. 90% is nuclear grade. It only takes 25 kilograms to make one nuke, so they technically have anywhere between 9 and 12. They have enough to make 9 to 12 nuclear bombs. It only takes a few weeks, and the major work is already done. So it's not very hard at this point.
Not knock that out. They would have had a nuclear weapon within 1 month after we knocked out. In other words,
it's possible they could have. That is true.
Said the B-2s, those beautiful B-2 bombers, totally obliterated their 3 sites. They have 3 sites, and they are now deep in the earth with, tons of rock. Now, that material should be gotten, but we have cameras on it. We have satellites with Space Force. Well, that was one of my beauties, Space Force. So important. But we're watching those. We're watching every single aspect of that area. They can't move.
You don't think Iran is doing everything they can to get that, or to protect it at least? I'm not so sure I believe all that.
Without us knowing exactly what's going on. But it's deep down, and it takes a long time to get it out. It's an amazing attack. Had we not done that, they would have had...
And the fact that he continues to praise our attack during this question leads me to believe that he might be deflecting a little bit. Let's just be real here.
Within 1 month from that date, they would...
I mean, no president is going to say anything, if they can help it, to discourage his own people. I mean, Trump has an obligation almost to give us a little bit of propaganda. Not that that's what I want or anything, but that's just, it's their duty to maintain, civility and tranquility, right?
Would have had a nuclear weapon.
Right.
If they had a nuclear weapon, they would have used it on Israel and the Middle East. Look, they went after 5 countries that were sort of neutral, I guess. I don't know how friendly they were, but they weren't in the line of attack. They dropped on UAE probably 1,800 missiles. They dropped on Saudi Arabia a lot, and they dropped on Qatar a lot. They dropped on Bahrain. They went crazy.
They did.
And everyone was surprised. Actually, it was good for us because they all joined us immediately, at some point. I mean, they're either going to be petrified or they're going to join. They all joined, and they've been very helpful. All of these countries have been great, and Kuwait.
And this is the key point that I was getting to, and the reason that you feel that...
It is pretty amazing that so many other Middle Eastern countries immediately flocked to our defense, at least in the media.
Cannot have a nuclear weapon because they will use it. And that's what I wanted you to explain to the audience.
Yeah, I think they would use it. And
they've been saying they want to use it.
And one weapon would, do damage like nobody's ever seen. Wipe it out, conceivably, big one.
Now,
not wipe it out. They don't need more than one. And then they go after the Middle East, and then they'd eventually come here, okay? And we're not letting them come here, and we're not going to let them.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Even if they weren't even if they weren't constantly shouting death to America, these maniacs don't need to have that sort of material. Now, should we be policing the world? That's not for me to say. Personally, my opinion is, yeah, we should to some degree. We are the most powerful military in the world, most powerful country, the least caveman country. So I think it's, to some degree we've got an obligation to police these maniacs, because nobody else will.
We have great allies over there. I'll tell you, those 5 countries. Look at the Israeli relationship. Look at the incredible partnership we have on this. And as Bibi Netanyahu said, we're the big brother and they're the small brother. And it's been a very effective team. What we've done literally in a matter of days, within 3-4 days, Iran essentially was wiped out. And it's so sad, though, when the press says they're fighting bravely. They're not fighting bravely. They have no anti-aircraft. We fly over there at will, can take out anything we want. As you know, last week I said we're going to strongly consider knocking out their power plants and the rest of their bridges. We took down their big bridge, but we just did that because we were having good discussions, and they go to the press. They're very good with public relations, much better with public relations than they are at fighting. They go to the press, and they say, President Trump said it's okay for us to have a nuclear weapon, when I never even spoke to him. And by the way, that would be the only thing I would never say to them. And they know that.
Right.
And then the New York Times, which is a fake.
Yeah, dude, the propaganda coming out of Iran is ridiculous. Jesus.
A fake paper. It's just a fake. You just believe the opposite. It's so sad when you look at CNN, the New York Times, ABC fake news, NBC fake news. When you look at this stuff, it's so sad to see it. I mean, they report things that they know are false.
Yeah.
It's almost treasonous, actually, if you want to really know the truth. It's almost treasonous. But if you're reading the New York Times exclusively, and their circulation, by the way, is way down.
Yeah.
It's way down. I'm proud to report that. But if you're reading the New York Times exclusively, you would say that they are doing great in the war.
Mr. President,
they're doing terribly.
I want to ask you about
that. The only thing they have is the ability to say, well, we may have some mines. And, if you have a ship, who wants to take a chance? You're not going to take a chance.
Mr. President, I want to ask you about that because you put out a tweet, and it really gripped the nation a week ago when we were all
we know which one
waiting and watching for the United States' next move.
Destroy the civilization?
Should the Iranians not open the Strait of Hormuz? And you wrote this on Truth Social. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have a complete and total regime change where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something wonderful can happen. Mr. President, you were criticized for this tweet because you said a whole civilization will die tonight.
Yeah,
what do you want to say about that? And what can you tell us about next steps here? Are you planning further destruction?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. That statement brought them to the table, with the exception of the one thing, which I believe that they're going to give up on. I believe they're going to give up on that pretty soon, to be honest, because it's not going to work. We actually thought we had them, and then all of a sudden they said, no, we want. So, but I believe, no. And when I say that, but remember, what have they said to us? For years, I've had to listen to them say, death to America, right?
Yeah, for real.
They say, death to America, death to Israel, America, the Satan. We will destroy America, death to America. Now, does anybody ever complain to you when they say that? I think that's a big step worse. Death to America. So they're allowed to say death to America. And what I'm referring to is, when I talk about civilization, it'll be much different because their military will be totally gone. It's pretty much gone now. But their military, look at their leadership. we have had regime change because the people we dealt with yesterday were, frankly, very smart, very sharp, very good.
We have not yet killed some of the most important people, but we have leveled quite a bit of them. We have killed quite a bit. It's in the double digits. We've killed way more of their leadership than they have of ours, of course.
Very good. I think they were smarter than the people from before, Khomeini and that group. Because look what it got them. Look what.
Oh yeah, it's rumored that the new Ayatollah is. It's rumored that he's crippled, that his legs, or one or both of his legs were damaged or something to that effect. There's a lot of rumors out there floating around, so I don't really know how true that is.
All of their antics was spending trillions they spent all their money on weapons. We've destroyed most of those weapons. Mm-hmm. But, when I say about a civilization, it really has changed. It really has. But think of it. They're allowed to say death to America.
The problem with Iran, and as far as money is concerned, is they virtually have an endless supply, because they've got a lot of the world's oil through there that comes through there. Now, I'm done with what he's saying. There's nothing else really major that he's going to say. My main theme today is China. Now, we all know that China is one of our biggest, I don't want to call them an enemy, but in some degrees they are. And there's a lot about this and other operations around the world that leads me to believe this is all to chokehold China. China gets half of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Half. That's a lot. Okay? And the thing about it is they've been faithful companions to Iran for quite a while. And the fact that we've done all of these things between this and what's been going on in Venezuela, we cut off a lot of their oil there, and then we cut off their supply of cheap silver, a few other rare earth elements. The thing about it is if we choke China enough, they're going to end up telling Iran, hey, listen, go back to the table and make a fucking deal, because we can't have this. And those are probably the only people that Iran would be willing to listen to. Because if China gets half of their oil through them, then, think about how much that is. China has, like over 1 billion people in their country? That's a lot. If they get half of their oil from them, just by numbers alone, man, that should tell you something. That's a big deal. That would make China their biggest customer. Okay, I am going to go over here to see what Fox Live is saying.
Charge. Plus, receive.
Okay, if Fox Live wants to have some sound, doesn't look like they do.
Loss of energy, cold hands and feet.
And of course, they go to commercial.
Insulin may be right for you. Don't wait. Act now.
More commercials. I'm sticking with some live
in talks. In a post on X, the Iranian embassy in Austria wrote, and I quote, "A simple explanation for those concerned. A blockade blocks. It cannot open the Strait of Hormuz, only restrict it."
All right, we know this. Well, let's take a look at what's going on here. Brent crude oil, as you can see on the graph here, has not changed very much. Has not changed much at all since Friday. Of course, the market's doesn't appear to be open. These are futures markets, though. Huh. Yeah, the futures markets are open, so I don't know why it's not doing it. Let me close this and reopen it. Perhaps that'll help. Drop something in the chat that you want me to check out. I'll be glad to scour through and look at whatever y'all want me to look at. Good morning, Gungda Messi 30. Why is China enemy? Well, I just explained it. I mean, kind of. Why though? They're more of a competitive enemy. You know, I mean, they've stolen a lot of intellectual property of ours. They do a lot of things behind the scenes that you don't hear about because we don't necessarily have proof of it. But rest assured, they're always trying to get a leg up. They want to be the world's #1 superpower. And forever, for a long time, America has held that title. And China wants it, which is natural. You could assume anybody wants it, right? But China's the only people besides Russia that have come close. And we can't have them. We can't. They can do whatever they want. We just can't have it in our hemisphere. And that was what Venezuela was all about. That's what Greenland, the idea of Greenland, is all about. Is making sure that China, and Russia for that matter, don't get a leg up over us. Right, the internet's being slow today, guys. There we go. Now the timer's ticking. All right, so now that's live. So we have Brent crude oil hasn't moved very much. Hasn't moved very much since the market opened last night. And look at that. It opened at 8 o'clock, right? Yeah, look at that. At Friday, when it closed around 5 p.m. Eastern time, we were at $91 a barrel. And then Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time, when it opened up, it opened at $99. It jumped 10%. And we could probably expect that to go up a little bit more. However, this is the global price of oil, which we can't really control very much. However, what we can control is the price of gas per gallon that you and I pay at the pump. And Trump is doing what he can to buffer some of that. Now, I don't know if you guys saw the map of the world with all of these. I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to pull that map up, and I'm going to be right back. I'm going to put this news on while I find
War
that.
ban. Would the White House work with a new administration if there was a change of government? He made a point of saying yes, the White House is looking to continue that constructive relationship with Hungary. There is some hope and expectation here that the new Prime Minister might soon fly to DC to meet directly with President Trump.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Trent. Appreciate that report. And I would say that the mainstream media are reporting this as if it's a referendum on the Trump administration. But Peter Magyar is center-right, as you mentioned. And it does seem, of course, Orban was there for 16 years. So not necessarily the full picture that they're portraying this morning, as this is completely a push against Trump. But we will be following this closely. Appreciate your report.
I got something funny.
Folks, as you know, April 15th, tax deadline is approaching.
Yeah. I got something funny for us. We need a little bit of humor, don't we, guys? I'm going to put this over here. And let's see. I'll make sure you can hear it. If you can't hear it, somebody let me know.
Real simple. These negotiations kicked off, and even prior to the finish, which I agree with some of the other analysts, they're not sure if this is completely finished, but here's what is finished. The idea that Iran can unilaterally shut down the Strait of Hormuz is done. And here's why. Because the United States Navy sent a couple of Arleigh Burke destroyers cruising up in there, and they said, wait a minute. The Iranians came out and said, hold on a second. We didn't give you permission to do that yet. You know what the Navy said? The United States Navy does not ask permission. The United States Navy goes where it needs to go. And it does not ask permission from anybody except the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, and the Lord God above. That's the only person, the only entities the United States Navy asks permission for. Steve, this is about freedom of navigation. And who provides that freedom of navigation on the high seas? It is the United States Navy. This is internationally recognized waterway. All right. This is governed by the
That's
UNCLOS, the UN
point.
Convention, the Law of the Sea. And the United States Navy is providing for that freedom of navigation. And if any of our other partners or allies or whoever else, China, Russia, whoever it may be, would like to participate in that freedom of navigation, well, I'll tell you where you can go. The address is 1600 Penn. Yep. The guy there, he loves to work the phones, and he's waiting for your call.
As a former destroyer officer that was in the Strait of Hormuz in the North Arabian Sea in the Gulf of Oman, this warms the cockles of my heart. However, sir, is this not the beginning? Because as the Revolutionary Guard shifted the center of gravity of the battle, as Napoleon at Clausewitz tells us, from Tehran to the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, we just shifted it to the Gulf of Oman, the global oil markets, the North Arabian Sea, and Beijing. Is this the beginning of the confrontation of the Chinese Communist Party in the United States of America, sir?
Could be.
Steve, I have been saying until I'm blue in the face, everyone is focused on the wrong strait. What did I say? Focused on the wrong strait. And then what came out earlier this week was Xi Jinping sitting down with the opposition to Taiwan, the Kuomintang, sitting down talking about peaceful reunification of the Taiwan Strait. Everything that President Trump is doing right now is about targeting China, and we are all hurtling towards this meeting, May 14th in Beijing, there, Zhongnanhai, the Forbidden City, right in the Gate of Heavenly Peace, Tiananmen Gate, Tiananmen Guangchang itself. And President Trump is doing everything. Look, at Venezuela came first, then comes Iran. He's systematically working his way through China's power modules, the arterial powers of the Chinese empire. We used to talk about this, the dragon, as they put their belt in road. Well, what's President Trump doing? He's snipping the belt. It's real simple, but he's negotiating.
Yes, sir. What do you think about that? Think he's right? I mean, I know he's right about certain parts of that. Now, look at this. This is a map of the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, whatever you want to call it. I don't really give a shit. But this, everything in red and blue, those are oil tankers. Those are oil tankers coming to buy oil from us. Now, it's not the same quality that you need to make gasoline. Not right off, of course. It can be refined. It can be worked. It can be tooled. You know, a lot of people were saying that the oil that we seized in Venezuela wasn't the quality of oil that you need to make gasoline with. Well, as true as that may be, there's still companies that are buying it. Sunoco, it was either Sunoco or Conoco, I can't remember which. Phillips 66 and someone else. They ended up buying a whole bunch of it, and they're still buying it. It takes a little bit more working, but it is being used. But that right there is what's going to keep the price of our gas a little lower. I don't think it's ultimately going to have too much effect on it. We shall see. But I've happened to find this to be beautiful. And obviously it vindicates what Trump was saying about people coming and buying our oil. Because when I first heard it, and I thought, it was typical Trump bluster. Trump loves to talk everything up. He does exaggerate from time to time, but that image right there says it all. And that's from an independent, verifiable source. I forget where this person got it. I spent about an hour last night looking at all this stuff. And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole again. If you want to find out where that came from, by all means, do your homework. But yeah, I'm also up for anything anybody else wants to send me. I'll be glad to feature it and talk about it. But yeah, that image right there, that's just gorgeous. That is people coming and buying our oil. That is a lot. That is a lot. Each one. I'm pretty sure each one can hold a hell of a lot. I won't speculate. I heard a few different figures. I don't want to speak an untruth, so I'll just leave it at that. All right. Come on. Computer's lagging. So, as you can see, the price of oil has not yet spiked. It's sitting right at about $100 a barrel. It probably will go up. Iran says that we should get ready for a $5 and $6 a gallon oil. You got to be careful with what you believe from Iran. I mean, I swear, their propaganda is at an all-time high. If you were to listen to nobody but them, you'd think they were winning this war. They're damn sure winning the meme war. That's for sure. Looks like Bitcoin took a massive drop last night, right at 6 p.m. Look at that. That's when the futures market opened up. But then it fully recovered, well, almost fully recovered, and then it's just been kind of a slow burn out there. But we're going to keep an eye on the price of oil. These are the nano crude oil futures, and this is the Brent crude oil futures. Okay. Let's go back over here. I'm going to Ion News. They are I forget what country they're out of, but they are not American. And I like to get some outside perspective.
I think that the voices within Iran arguing for a nuclear deterrent may now feel vindicated and emboldened even.
Well, there's no question that Iran got attacked in part because it was getting close to having the capability to produce a nuclear weapon, but it didn't have a nuclear weapon.
Not yet.
So one of the reasons that you're seeing military action against Iran, but not military action against North Korea, is that North Korea already has the bomb. So yes, there is a logic here that would give added incentive to Iranian officials to say, see, we really do need to get the bomb, we need to race to the bomb. We've got 1,000 pounds of highly enriched uranium.
No, they've got enough to make anywhere from 9 to 11 nukes. It's a matter of kilograms. It takes 25-ish kilograms to make one nuke. And I think what they've got is 60%, and that amount at 60% is enough to make... it's unknown, okay? We don't know how enriched it is. We can only speculate. But as of June of last year, it was at 60% enrichment. It needs to be 90% enrichment. It doesn't take long. It's not that hard. Once you get up to that 60%, it's not that hard to go the other 30 to get to 90% enriched. And in June, it was weeks away. So, do we want Iran to be able to fulfill their promise of death to America they've been running their mouth for almost 50 years? Hell no, we don't.
And that's why I think one can come away from these talks in Pakistan worried about the next steps.
Of course, Andrew, this has been a war of many unintended consequences. Dr. Kapchan, and Israel and Lebanon have also emerged as a growing flashpoint here. Do you think the collapse of the Islamabad talks they could spill over into these negotiations as well, and perhaps further complicate efforts to prevent a wider regional escalation?
I want you to take a look at this heat map. This, of course, is as of the end of aftermarket on Friday, right? Pre-market's not yet open for another 25 minutes or so. But then, only the energy sector is all green. Everything else is red. I find that funny.
It's good news that Israel is prepared to open negotiations with the Lebanese government about the disarmament of Hezbollah. And number two, if we do get progress on the diplomacy, if we do see the United States and Iran finding common ground a week from now, 2 weeks from now, I do think that the United States, if it needs to, would put pressure on Israel to stop the bombing of Lebanon if it's necessary for a durable truce. We're not there yet, but if the diplomacy does pick up speed, I'm guessing that will be one sidebar of that negotiation.
Absolutely, Dr. Kapchan, you've raised some very pertinent questions, but of course we'll have to wait and see and how the situation develops from here. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your perspective with us.
Pleasure to be with you. Bye-bye.
Negotiations between the United States and Iran have ended without a peace agreement. We are already in the fifth day of 14-day ceasefire that was declared by President Trump.
Hey, Asia News. I am going to pull up Asia News. I like this. I like these people. Don't get me wrong, I don't like them, but they tend to have fairly good shit on.
The huge amount of casualties in just over a month. Israel has unleashed airstrikes, artillery and phosphorus shells in South Lebanon, despite the planned talks in Washington. Lebanese media reports heavy artillery fire across multiple towns in the Tyre district. Early on Monday,
that white phosphorus was hell.
5 people in the town of Barzouria.
It's a shame, but that's against Hezbollah, and Hezbollah needs to die. They are nothing but
Lebanon is struggling to cope with a massive new wave of displacement as ongoing Israeli attacks force more than 1 million people from their homes in just over a month.
According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the humanitarian situation is worsening by the day, and a quarter of those displaced are children. To respond, authorities have converted public spaces.
This is what they report.
Including schools, government buildings, and even sports facilities.
They don't want to report why. They don't want to report what Hezbollah does to deserve this.
Better some other don't find any place to it, because you know the number of refugees is very, very big.
In one stadium,
keep the camera trained on the kids. Make sure you show the kids.
But overcrowding and limited resources mean many still go without basic necessities.
The government is stumbling. If they bring breakfast, we don't get lunch, and if we get lunch, there will be no dinner. It's midday and no one brought us breakfast. They can't catch up with the demand. People are hungry and in dire conditions. No one knows when we're going back home. Everyone is on their phones, following the news, waiting to learn when they can go back.
Across the country,
what's that you say? Not a damn thing about Hezbollah?
Have been turned into shelters housing thousands more displaced families. Others remain.
Nothing? Not a damn word about Hezbollah and what they did to deserve every bit of this? Ugh, the news kills me sometimes. If you think that the news isn't biased, you got a hole in your head, dude. Straight up hole in your head.
Demining operations in the Strait of Hormuz to clear the mines. First of all, your quick assessment of this decision by the President of the United States.
I think that the U.S. can blockade the Strait of Hormuz. You have to remember that a blockade is an act of war. That's why during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, President Kennedy ordered a blockade, but he called it a quarantine. So if the U.S. does blockade ships coming in and out of the Strait of Hormuz, oil and gas prices are going to skyrocket.
Yeah.
Wait till the markets open tomorrow. We're going to see the effects. Stock markets are going to
That's not live then, is it?
Prices are going to go up. It's going to increase inflation, hurt the world economy.
Probably.
Whether the U.S. has the temerity to actually demine the strait, that's another question. Trump makes claims, the Iranians deny them. We don't know what's happening with that.
Yes, and they make ridiculous claims too.
Blockade the strait at both ends.
Uh-huh. They make ridiculous claims of their own. These baboon cavemen out there pumping propaganda into the skulls of fools that actually believe it. I can't tell you how many Americans I see rooting for Iran. Like, how clueless can you be? If we ever had one enemy that is worth all of this, it's Iran. It makes me sad, dude. It really makes me sad that there are so many people out there just straight up rooting for Iran. Anybody but America.
They are cheaper than fighter jets. They require fewer pilots, and they can be launched from remote areas. The drone has become one of the most defining technologies of modern warfare.
Israeli media reported that debris from an intercepted Iranian missile hit a residential building.
A drone-related incident sparked a fire near the Bologna International Airport. Authorities suspended flights as emergency teams responded. 2 weeks
weeks after the massive U.S.-Israeli air campaign against Iran began, and facts are spreading far beyond the battlefield.
Hundreds of people have been killed and thousands more have been injured.
How does Iran stay strong?
Sorry to cut you short, but the White House did indicate that the Vice President was really not talking about nuclear weapons. They had to clarify that, so they just had to make that clear.
Yeah, better make that clear.
But the experts around the world interpreted that to mean nuclear weapons. And when Trump says he's going to end the civilization within 24 hours,
we're still talking about that.
There's only one way to commit that genocide, and that's with nuclear weapons.
It's not genocide.
So, we don't know, and those just might be threats. But you can't make those kinds of threats
the hell
in this era, in this age. So I understand why the Iranians don't want to give up their rich uranium. I hope they do. They've agreed to do that in the past. What we need is to denuclearize, not have more countries with nuclear weapons right now.
Dude, they want us. They've actually floated the idea of denuclearizing America. I saw it myself. The Iranian, I can't remember who it was, but it was official. They were saying, "Dude, we need to denuclearize America." Yeah, good luck with that, buddy.
And by this excessive demands or excessive concessions.
It's interesting that so much of the discussion has been around the nuclear
Local media
program.
reported that soaring living costs have severely impacted factory workers. Police were deployed in large numbers to control the situation, and traffic was severely disrupted across key routes. Authorities and state lawmakers urged calm and wages to resolve
that we are having here
officials said strict action had taken against those
this Monday showcased as a Pope Leo. He's in Algeria right now. He's going to be doing a tour across several nations, and I do believe we have a live
Trump's been hitting at the Pope lately.
To dip into this briefly here. We're expecting for Pope Leo to make some remarks at some point similar, I believe, to what we saw earlier on today. So I'm just going to stay on this for a little bit here, lift up the audio. It kind of,
I do not
it's
care.
a switch feed. That's what we call it. So we'll have views of here, outside, some aerial views, and then at moments it goes inside to the venue in which we are expecting Pope Leo to make those remarks.
Who
so
cares?
Let's hang on this for a bit.
Who cares what the Pope has to say? He's just a dude in a funny hat. All right. So far, it is a slow day for news, but I expect that to pick up when the markets open, and we'll learn a little bit more about what's going on in the world with the war.
Let's wait and see how this pans out effectively or efficiently. Professor, it's good to see you. Thank you very much for your time.
It's good to see you.
44 days ago, Strait of Hormuz was open free for all vessels to move in and out. Iran blocked it in retaliation to US and Israeli strikes on its soil. Both parties agreed to open the strait under AC.
It's international waters.
Declared a blockade of the strait. The military confrontation is moving over the crucial waterway. Here's a report.
Pay close attention to the way that they characterize this. The Strait of Hormuz is international waters, which means nobody has the right to control the flow through there. Iran's doing just that.
40 days of war, 4 days of ceasefire, and 21 hours of marathon negotiations later, the US and Iran are back to square one. Both sides failed to breach the deadlock during talks in Islamabad. Now, US President Donald Trump has ordered fresh mobilization in the Hormuz Strait.
Good.
In a post on his Truth Social account, Trump announced that the US Navy will impose a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. This means US forces will block any and all ships that are trying to enter the crucial waterway. Trump also added that those ships who are paying a toll to Iran will not have safe passage in the high seas. Trump has vowed to force open the Strait of Hormuz. The American president says that any Iranian who attacks US ships will be blown to hell. This could derail the days of war that are so far being held by a fragile ceasefire. Trump has issued a warning to Iran. He says that US forces remain locked and loaded and will finish whatever is left of Iran. Trump is responding to a blockade with a blockade. This could send shockwaves through global oil markets due to the complete choking of the Strait of Hormuz. The US has previously used blockades against Venezuela and Cuba. The crown jewel of the US Navy, the USS Gerald R. Ford, is back in action. It has joined the USS Abraham Lincoln and the amphibious sword ship, the USS Tripoli. American forces are already stepping up operations to open the Strait of Hormuz. Two American guided missile destroyers passed through the strait on Saturday. This was the first transit by American ships during the war, and a challenge to Iran's control of the waterway. The Iranian side, however, said that the US warships were forced to escape after they issued a warning. Following the collapse of US-Iran talks in Pakistan, Israel's army chief, Eyal Zamir, has ordered heightened readiness. Israeli forces have been asked to identify fresh targets and prepare strike packages. Iran's nuclear enrichment and the Strait of Hormuz blockade remain the main sticking points. Both the US and Iran declared that no common ground had been reached during the talks in Islamabad. Is there more diplomacy to come? Will the diplomatic needle still move? Or will there be a full-blown war for the Strait of Hormuz?
Probably.
Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
After failed talks in Pakistan, President Donald Trump has ordered a U.S. naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. This is also in response to Iran's refusal to give up its nuclear ambitions.
Pay attention to this timer that's on this screen right here.
मेरा बच्चा वैसा है नहीं वो बेगुनाह है वो बेकसूर है और उसको फंसा रहे हैं इतना समझ आ रहा है मैंने बता दिया आपको और मुझे अभी सिर्फ फैसला चाहिए और मुझे भरोसा है न्याय पे कि हमको न्याय मिलेगा
फिर कल ही उन्हें जुडिशियल कस्टडी
There was a timer there that was counting down to some American operation. The timer's gone now, but I assume they're just flashing through different stories. This is, as you can see, it says CNN News 18, right? But this is no way, shape, or form related to America's CNN. This is somewhere in Asia. It's largely Indian, and it is very much chock full of propaganda. I enjoy watching it because sometimes it's just downright funny. But as of right now, they don't seem to have too much going on in there that we should be interested in, right? They're talking about the Asian elections, or excuse me, the Hungary's elections. I don't know about you, but I don't give a damn about Hungary's elections. I am going to pull up Bloomberg just to get some money info. Because all we hear about lately is war stuff. And of course they're going to talk about war too, but this has got more of a money edge to it.
Basically not reissuing this license for countries, especially Asia, to buy Russian crude. That's one. Two, there's now another blockade on the blockade. So any one or two or three vessels that we're getting out, even if they're Iranian, maybe even going to a place like India, that will no longer happen now starting at 10 a.m. So today is much worse. The final ships that left their destination have gotten there, and there's not another inflow coming in. China is halving the amount of crude they buy from Saudi Arabia.
Brent WTI so far this morning back into the triple digits and higher by more than 7%. Understand this morning an inflationary shock. For the Fed, you can look through a particular month, particularly driven by gas prices. I think more important for the Fed would be core PCE. That is running at 3% year over year. It's a percentage point above their own target. The starting point is just not good when you're overlaying another energy price shock on top of that. Our baseline is that we will get a cut in the back half of the year, but kind of confidence in that has waned So here's the latest this morning. Surging inflation eroding bets the Fed will cut interest rates this year. Al-Hosseini of Columbia Threadneedle writing the data overall leaves the Fed with a live option to execute an insurance hike later this year. Ed joins us now for more. Ed, good morning. Enjoyed the note, so I'll share a bit more of it with our audience. We've had some early colour on the impact of the Iran war on inflation. Today's CPI print, Friday, is immediately relegated to the EFL. That's a different league in English football. Anyway, the Premier League is for data that can tell us whether some of the excess inflation we had at the end of last year is starting to broaden out and become entrenched.
Will not have safe passage.
I think the good news is so far, both inflation and inflation expectations have been pretty well behaved. Consumers have updated their short-term inflation expectations. They're expecting this gas spike to pass through into inflation over the next year. But longer-term, things have been quite stable, and that's exactly what the Fed wants to see at this stage.
What do you think is going to make of the Fed? Consumer expectations or market-based inflation expectations? Which is more important?
A little bit of both. The market-based expectations are a live tracker. They're the most immediate feedback that the Fed can get. The consumer expectations carry a little bit more weight because they're a little bit more connected to the real economy. So they need some mix of both validate just staying on hold at this stage.
What components are you looking for that broadening out? Because we're seeing a number of different shocks layered on top of each other. And you could say any one of them are temporary or going to pass. At the same time, it starts to feel a little bit like, what are we doing if we're just excluding absolutely everything that comes down the pike?
I think the lesson of the COVID-era inflation shock is not to be too narrow in the inflation analysis. Look at momentum in the overall basket. Look at the breadth of the overall basket. What share of the basket is growing at 3, 4, 5% on a quarter-over-quarter basis, for example. That's a much better indicator than a narrow view of what's going on in energy or what's going on in airline affairs and so on. And again, I think the good news is at the start of the year, the inflation basket, the inflation process had narrowed a lot really over the last 2 or 3 years.
You say an insurance hike could be on the table. This is the bear case for all the bulls on Wall Street. If you take a look at their notes, if you look under the hood, the one thing that could torpedo their optimism would be something of a more hawkish take from central banks, particularly in the United States. Why do you think that that's increasingly likely, given the rhetoric we've heard from Fed Chair Jay Powell?
I think from the Fed's perspective, you want to keep that door open. It demonstrates credibility to the market. It anchors expectations further out on the curve. And it essentially tells the market, look, we have gone through this process just 2 or 3 years ago. We reestablished our credibility by bringing inflation down. We're going to keep it in place by keeping our policy options open. We don't want to narrow those policy options at this stage.
Well, Jay Powell's term ends in 1 month and 2 days. Do you have insurance hikes baked in for Kevin Warsh?
The answer is no. And I'm not sure his term is going to end in a month and a half. But look, at this stage, technically, at this stage, markets are finding it really hard to price those hikes in the U.S. That door is much wider and open in the UK, in Europe, in emerging markets. In the U.S., we've had a debate between how many cuts and staying on hold. That debate could shift. Again, the inflation process accelerates. That if you're sitting at the Fed, you want to make sure that door is slightly open.
I'm half joking, but I don't even know if Warsh's term is going to start anytime soon. We're meant to have a hearing.
Yes, it's been delayed.
Why is that?
Punchbowl News says because paperwork. Which I find interesting, because shouldn't he be doing his paperwork since Trump won when he wanted the job?
Yes. And you're telling me he doesn't have the paperwork ready?
According to Punchbowl.
That just sounds absolutely stunning, doesn't it?
Especially all the other potential delays. I guess he thought this would never end. He never expected to be at the top of the Fed.
Here we are. How do things change when Kevin Warsh gets into the seat?
I think things change on a couple of fronts. One, in the background, there's been a live conversation about the Fed's balance sheet. I think that gets reanimated in the course of his hearings. If we move forward with shrinking the Fed's balance sheet, what does that look like? What is the philosophy behind it? And what does that mean for the future of Fed policy making with that balance sheet tool? The second, of course, is the short-term issue of take the productivity mix, the tariff shock, the energy shock at the moment. How do you make a case for cuts if you are Kevin Warsh? I think it's an extraordinarily difficult case.
Have you got an idea of how they present that case after a series of negative supply shocks across goods, labour and now energy? How you present that case this summer?
So one way to frame it up is to say, look, the inflation process, again, going into the shock was really well behaved. We brought down wages. If our theory of the case when it comes to inflation is that it's some interplay of expectations, wages, and productivity, on all three of those fronts, the news is quite good. Expectations are well behaved, wages have come down, productivity has gone up. That's a great case for easing policy on the margin. Now, that's keeping a lot of other things constant. It's not, I think, a complete case, but I think you have the makings of a case there.
Ed, good to see you. Enjoy the work as always. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Ed Hosseini there, Columbia Threat Needle, on some of the economic gymnastics that might be taking place later this summer when we finally get those hearings.
Yeah, if we get those economic gymnastics, I expect the Treasury to play a part in it, because there will be some sort of Treasury-Fed accord to try to keep the long end of the yield curve lower. I mean, ultimately, how do you get any of this without leading to inflation expectations not becoming a bit unanchored? And I keep going back to what Cameron Dawson said. Find someone to believe in you the way the market believes in the Fed's 2% target, because we have not been there for more than 5 years. And pretty much everyone still believes we will get their way.
I just can't believe his paperwork's not ready.
Who's he going to blame? The dog ate my paperwork.
He's been planning this for 10 years.
The baby.
And my paperwork's not ready.
And also, he was interviewed with the Treasury Secretary, so he should have had, he should have had the paperwork done in December.
Okay.
Medical form?
Right? I've got no idea. I'd love some details from the guys at Punchbowl News. Just what are they talking about? What paperwork? Coming up, Jason Draha of UBS, Oksana Aronoff of JP Morgan, Stephen Rashuto of Mizuho, Bob Elliott of Unlimited Funds. The third hour of Bloomberg Surveillance. Up next.
Some people would say there's maybe a little bit of a bubble in AI. When you have companies with market caps of $5 trillion, you don't see any bubble there at all?
Whenever you have an acceleration in technology and people get excited about it, you have significant capital formation around new companies that are trying to capitalize on that opportunity. We've seen this before through history, and you're seeing it now. It won't be a straight line. The opportunity set with AI is enormous. There will be winners and losers. And it's hard to pick the winners and losers now. And certainly a lot of the capital that's being deployed will not produce adequate returns. And a bunch of capital that's being deployed will actually not produce any returns. But it's hard. It's hard to call the timing on these things. And the thing I point to just from a historical lens is in the fall of 1996. Alan Greenspan talked about irrational exuberance in stock markets, and the NASDAQ was at 1,300. And the NASDAQ 3.5 years later over 5,000. So, these things go on for a long time, but ultimately, there are adjustments, there will be drawdowns, there will be rebalancing. It's hard to call it because the trend.
Let's get that out of the way there. I got some things I found. On social media. Now, do I like to get my news from social media? Hell no. But there are oftentimes little gems that you can find of valuable information. Whoops. Now, I'll leave it to you to determine how valuable some of this is. This is me on Facebook if you'd like to follow me. All right, let's see.
We were ready for negotiation. We came to Islamabad for negotiation. We were very, very serious for negotiation. Although we had doubt about it, we knew that our other side is not serious, but we came to show to the world that we are people of the peace.
Do I even need to say anything?
And if
they're the people of peace.
The other side learned and got its lesson and came to the negotiation, we will come to negotiation. I'm sure that they cannot do anything. Before this war, the Strait of Hormuz was open.
They continue pushing the narratives that they know that the media will pick up on. If you notice, they're very smart when it comes to how to control a narrative and using propaganda.
We didn't want to close it. We are not going to ban it, and we hope that no one in the world be suffered from.
They care about people suffering. My ass.
The Strait of Hormuz, but they brought a lot of unfortunate in the Strait of Hormuz, and we hope that very soon the Strait of Hormuz also will be solved and goes back as before. I'm thankful to our brothers and sisters in India, as well as I'm thankful to the government of India. They supported us, they showed us their solidarity, and also they showed us their sympathy. And also today a lot of officials from governments and also different parties participated in this gathering, which is 40th day of the martyrdom of Ayatollah Khamenei. We are thankful to all of them.
The martyrdom of the Ayatollah. Good riddance. He died.
Islamat for negotiation.
He died like the dog that he is. I certainly will not be shedding any tears. Man, the internet.
Chinese government, the CCP, have gotten all of their resources, oil, from Iran. In breaking Iran down, guess what? You 50%. Got it. We are now impacting all. So you just see China or Iran is bigger. These individuals that have been controlling so much of the nations, plural, they're finally coming to naught. Why? Because what Trump has done, in a nutshell, he's taking away the CCP's ability to operate. Why? The CCP, they've been extracting oil from Iran, coming down the straits, not paying the full market value, and then they use that money to build their navies, etc., and to destroy our lives here. Some of you may ask, well, how do they do it? Simple. They put money in entertainment. They put money with various groups over here to destroy America, whether it's the LGBTQ. They are major sponsors to...
Okay. There was one more I wanted to play here. Actually, I don't know if that was a video. It's just an image. But this is a very interesting image. The Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Qatar, they are reportedly considering a massive 950-kilometer Strait of Qatar canal to dodge Iran's grip on the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, that's certainly a bold idea. They want to make their own little Panama Canal. That's a hell of an ordeal to undertake, and it certainly won't be done overnight. What do you think about this? I think this is awesome. I think if anybody in the world has the money to make this happen, it's definitely the United Arab Emirates. Now, let's be clear. I don't like this son of a bitch right here. He is a piece of human garbage himself. However, you know, it's good to have him on our side. And right now, everybody's pissed off. Everybody in the Middle East is pissed off with Iran because of all this. The Strait of Hormuz is international waters. They do not have the right to do what they're doing. So this is one solution. I would love to see this happen. Oh, it'd be so great. I would love to see Iran's only their only ace in the hole snipped off. That would be glorious, would it not? All right, looks like nothing's really changed between Bitcoin and oil. I expect oil to run up. The dollar's coming up a little bit, which probably means gold and silver are going to come down a little bit, as per usual. How are we looking in pre-market? Not much has changed. It looks almost identical to what it looked like a little while ago. And we are going to go back over to some news and see what these people are saying. Hormuz Strait battleground opens. Okay.
The strait by choking the Strait of Hormuz also hits economies of Gulf's most powerful nations. Iran's navy may have suffered major losses, but it does not require much firepower to keep the threat alive in the Strait of Hormuz. One strike on a commercial vessel and the rest will stay put.
That timer is back on the screen.
The Gulf economies begin to feel the heat. We have 9 million people working in the Gulf, 9 to 10 million.
Yep. The U.S. maritime op begins at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
That we need to look at is of course the pressure on our currency. Yeah. The rupee will begin to cave. You won't have any place to sell your products. Markets will have to be found, which might be further afield. Costs will go. Margins will shrink. There's a knock-on effect. I mean, we were just talking before the show. You run businesses, you invest in businesses.
Okay. Yeah. Please make a point. No. Please make a point. I just wanted to say that 4 Costco ships that are on board China are now stuck here. So the Chinese are also going to face the brunt of what's happening right now. It's going to hurt everybody.
So that maritime op that's scheduled to begin at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, that's just the blockade. That's when they plan to implement it.
First, they need to check which ship is coming from where, board that ship, take that ship to, assuming they're going to follow at least a modicum of international law, take that ship to a mooring place which is safe, and then move to the next one. That's going to, I think it's been estimated it's going to require 2 aircraft carrier strike groups. It's going to require about 14 destroyer vessels. That's just to get it started.
Correct.
You're not building in the pressure of China. Which clearly, I don't think the US can just take China, and if there's a shortage in China, Xi Jinping is going to have is going to start balling pretty quickly. So I think that it's a nice move by Donald Trump, more as a rhetoric, to avoid having to take real action, because after Islamabad and the failed show, clearly there was some talk of we're going to go. He could have gone the whole obliteration route. I think he's using this as a stopgap measure, trying to figure out okay, what are the things that we can perhaps hopefully give in to Iran. And I hope to God that Iran gets sensible too, because they're playing Russian roulette with the people.
After you all.
They sure are. They sure are. It's just a matter of time before we make an example out of Iran for all their bluster. They just don't have a clue. They have no idea. I mean, they don't care either. They're willing to die for their ridiculous ideologies.
Risk exposure in interest rates markets, we're saying stay in the front of the curve, like no more than a 5-year point. You don't want that interest rate exposure. So you can make changes at the margin, but ultimately inflation shock is really hard to hedge, other than sort of de-risking significantly.
Are any parts of the market that are prepared for serious escalation?
I think it depends. If you think of serious escalation, I think the front of the curve, pricing in, like now it's a couple weeks ago, actually hikes seemed optimistic to me.
Negotiations behind the scenes, but Trump is capable of anything, as is Vance really. Vance is the one who said we have tools in our toolkit that we've never used, that we may have to use, meaning nuclear weapons.
Probably.
So they both are making these maximalist
Professor, sorry to cut you short, but the White House did indicate that the Vice President was really not talking about nuclear weapons.
So what else would it be?
Had to clarify that. So
what else would it be?
I just had to make that clear.
They're just saying that so that people, they want to confirm one way or the other, right? They're not going to say, yeah, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about nukes. No, they're not going to say that.
Within 24 hours.
I mean, come on. What do we have in our toolbox, in our military toolbox, that we don't want to use, but we can? Come on.
Threats. But you can't make those kinds of threats in this era, in this age. So I understand why the Iranians don't want to give up their enriched uranium. I hope they do. They've agreed to do that in the past. What we need is to denuclearize, not to have more countries with nuclear weapons right now. 9 is more than enough.
Professor, finally, the Iranian side did indicate...
They've suggested that America should denuclearize. Dude, nobody's going to denuclearize, okay? That is not something anybody's going to give up. If they say they did, they are lying. I don't care who it is. They will be lying. It's one of those age-old things where, if you want to fight fire with fire, what do you need? Well, you need fire. And that's one of those supreme weapons. That's the height of our as a civilization's ability to destroy is nuclear weapons. That is the peak. It doesn't get any worse than that. So if somebody else has a weapon better than yours, and they have the best weapon in the world, well, what are you going to do? You're going to get one too. It only makes sense. From a defensive standpoint, I get it. But being that they're the ones in the world that have been chanting death to America, how long do you think it would take for them to go ahead and use it, especially on Israel? It's their 1,000-year-old prophecy to destroy Israel. No matter the cost. They have said the more innocent civilians die, the better. They try constantly to frame Israel as the aggressor, as the bad guy. Nobody's innocent when it comes to war. Okay? Let's get that straight. But the way that they manipulate the media and the narrative in the media, that's on a whole different level. Iran is dominating in the media right now.
We'll get to that. It's not out of the question, but nor is any other option right now.
All right, let's wait and see how this pans out effectively or efficiently. Professor, it's good to see you. Thank you very much for your time.
It's good to see you.
44 days ago, Strait of Hormuz was open free for all vessels to move in and out. Iran blocked it in retaliation to U.S. and Israeli strikes on its soil. Both parties agreed to open the strait under a ceasefire agreement, and now the U.S. president has himself...
Let's go over here.
The Iranians are not going to have money. This is their thought process. So what's happened today? Like today, Chinese ships are all stuck here. There are 5 Chinese ships. One went through, 4 are stuck here. So the Chinese are also now going to feel the pinch. The Chinese are going to feel the pinch. The Americans are able to do this even for 5 days. That is a lot of money that is stuck. And the Iranian...
Look, man, China's going to do one of 2 things. No, one of 3. They're going to either find another place to get oil, which is laughable. They could come get some from us. But from a sense of national pride, I don't think they're going to do that, at least on the surface. At least they're not going to advertise it if they do it, right? One of the other things they could do is they could join the war on the table, as if, as opposed to under the table, the way they've been doing things by helping Iran and supplying Iran with weapons. And the third thing they could do, which is the most sensible for them to do, China, is to do their best to convince Iran to stop doing what they're doing. And that would prevent them from being dragged into a war. Nobody wants to go into a war. If China wanted to be on the field with us, they would have already. Nobody wants war with the United States, because everybody knows that if it gets to be too bad, then all hell could break loose. If one country uses nukes, they're all going to use nukes. So that's what China, the major players, China and Russia, they don't want to do. So it is in China's best interest, being that they are the biggest buyer from Iran when it comes to oil. It is in China's best interest to put a knee on their neck and tell them, listen, let's go back to the table. Let's go back to the negotiating table. Or open the Strait of Hormuz. I think that China is probably the only people that Iran would listen to in that
oil imports. What's going to happen now very seriously, this is what experts are already gaming this. These nations are all going to come together and they're going to activate all these ports in this region. So the ships are all going to come here and there are going to be now land routes into these places.
But the infrastructure won't be there.
No. The point is, now this is where it is. This is going to take a huge amount of trucks and roadways. Now the roads are already there. The containers and the container trucks have to come. Now the moment the container trucks are here, there will start a steady flow if this war drags on for the next 2 to 3 months. If it doesn't, then this chokehold, the moment the Iranians feel the choke in this region, they will be forced. And you know what will happen? Because the focus is on everything that's going out, what's going in we don't know. There are those who believe that there will be amphibians which will go towards Khark. This is the other tactic which many people are saying, and I'm just going to quickly zoom in and say if the stealths, see the big attack is on Khark, right? Now this is what people, you may say it is improbable. You're going to say the minesweepers went in, the US-American minesweepers went in.
Every day that Trump finds himself in a quagmire, US stocks, US markets are being pledged.
Exactly.
Okay. Pump prices in the United States are going up. I have in-laws there.
Correct.
I know the scenario.
I totally agree.
So I don't know, because it will all come down to the ability to absorb pain.
Correct.
And fundamentally speaking,
correct.
all of this is predicated on one thing. That the United States is the most resilient amongst all and can withstand all pain pricks. And therefore, being involved in a massive quagmire for 2, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and everyone else is going to sweat, and we're all going to come and aid Donald Trump who wants to play Messiah, Jesus Christ.
No, we can't. There's something very more time. There's something very obvious, and I'm just going to throw it open there. That he is willing to sell oil to the rest of the world, but he's not able to keep oil at $3 a barrel internally.
There's a difference in quality of crude.
Correct. They can't refine it. They'll have to buy it back. That's one point. The other thing, viewers and to all of you, I think you would have done the numbers. The world actually is consuming $100 million barrels per day.
Every day.
This Hormuz crisis has brought that down to 80 to 85 million barrels per day. That means there is a 10 to 15 million barrel shortage. So that means you are constricting demand by 10 to 15 million barrels per day. So what does 10 million barrels fuel? 10 million barrels can fuel 1 million cars for a year. So someone somewhere will feel the pinch, and someone somewhere will have to stop consuming crude. Or fuel. That's what's being created right now. This is the condition that's being created right now.
There are a couple of points. One, Iran's actual exports have increased over the last 45 days. Before that, they've learned to live without being able to export. These numbers are, I think, about 30-40% higher than what they used to.
Correct.
Second, if let's assume these guys block Iranian vessels coming out, the only response Iran will have is, guess what, I'm not going to let anything from any of the other countries come out. And therefore the pain is the keyword. Can the US and can Trump take the pain of getting smashed in November? Because I mean, it's oil, the gas pump price is about $4.20 now.
$4.20.
So at that price, are they going to be able to take that pain? And my gut feel is that the US does not, or the US citizen does not really care about this war. The Iranians.
I just thought I'd put up on the screen the idea that has been put up there by the UAE, United Arab Emirates. They have discussed creating their own little Panama Canal, if you will. I think this is very serious. This is very ambitious. Obviously, it won't happen overnight. But what do you think? How you doing, African Love 254? Good morning. How are you? What do you think about this idea, though? Creating a strait to essentially give the finger to Iran. What do you think? And then, of course, there's this image, which is, I think this was as of last night. This is all of the tankers that are heading to America to buy our oil. Now, not all of this is okay for use to make gasoline. A lot of this is for various things, but it doesn't matter. It's still a buffer to our coffers, right?
Or those group of people are fighting to the finish.
They're
going to take down the whole world with them. They are people who look at annihilation as actually a reward. So We have a problem here. If you're dealing with the
increasingly,
then we've got a problem.
Yeah.
And I want to add something what Rahul said in the beginning of the show.
Wind up after this.
Out of the remittances total to India, 38% are coming from this region. It's about $51 billion a year. That's predominantly three states: Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Kerala. This individual state economy is ideally linked. We have short-term pain, people being laid off. The next 3 months, we think the impact over the next few months will have a huge impact on India's GDP.
See, there will be around 1%. Correct. Prime Minister has already said there's going to be a long-term impact. Right now, we've got the second Iranian tanker also coming into the Gulf of Gujarat, that region, to land at a private port, and perhaps the first time tankers are coming in after 2021. But how?
Selling as concerns mount, and you have a dislocation which can be a very dramatic recession pricing type dislocation, even without a recession. And that, I think, is probably the playbook.
Let's build on this just a little bit more. Where have we been building leverage? Because we've heard so much over the last 5 years the consumer balance sheets, household balance sheets are strong. We've heard so many times that corporate balance sheets are strong. Coming out of the pandemic, there was a massive transfer from the sovereign to those balance sheets, and that's why they're resilient. Where's the leverage been building? Where's the weakness?
So certainly some of these lower credit rated companies absolutely have more leverage and remains to be seen. Right? There's not a lot of transparency there. So in the private credit portfolios particularly, so it remains to be seen. They are absolutely more levered, and this is how investors and managers and operators and companies get into trouble time and time again, certainly through leverage and liquidity concerns. There's also, the question I frequently get, which I think is related to what you're asking, is how does this become systemic? Because that's really what we're concerned about. And the reality is that we don't know that a risk is systemic until it becomes that. Because if we did, we would put guardrails around it. Right? That's kind of the nature of what allows it to become systemic. And one avenue possibly for it becoming a systemic risk, not a huge base case for us, but certainly a possibility, are the insurers. Because the insurers have taken on a significant amount of private credit exposure. It's something like 18% of their overall bond exposure today. They are also, some of them are owned by alternative asset managers. And by the way, some unintended consequences of that, to the extent that these insurers provide guarantees in the muni bond market, we're seeing energy prepaid munis being impacted by that because the third party in that transaction sometimes is that insurance company. So there are many kind of avenues for transitioning that risk from one epicenter of the market to a different part of the market. And insurance could be that because they're in a little bit of uncharted territory with more illiquidity and more high-yield exposure, which has been the other headline over a number of years, right, as they operated in an ultra-low environment and, in fact, kind of matched their liabilities.
We obliterated, we completely dismantled everything. That is not true.
Oh, really? Tell us what is true, honey. Or don't. Yeah, it doesn't look like that one wants to cooperate with us. Oh,
completely dismantled everything. That is.
Come on. Dude. Really? Okay, well, every time I want to pull that one up, it doesn't want to cooperate. So we'll let them F off for now. We will keep this up.
He's giving up some part of that 1,800-point rally that we saw all of last week, which is why it's down by about 400, 500 points this morning itself. A third of that has been taken out. But the bigger barometer of how the street perceives this would be better viewed from how the oil prices are. Remember when before the crisis, oil was to go around that $65 per barrel. Thereafter, every time there was an escalation, oil prices would rise. They went all the way up to $120 per barrel as well. And then as peace talks began, I mean the oil price goes down closer to $95. Now, given the fact that they haven't gone the way the streets wanted it, oil has spiked back again to a little over $102. So the sense that one makes of all the things that are happening right now is that perhaps the worst of price damage is behind us. Every incremental news that will come will have a relatively lesser impact on both oil prices as well as the markets, because one market's taking this uncertainty into its stride. So after an 1800-point up move, because of this news, it's down 500 points. It's not as much. And increasingly, as there are new developments that come by, that will start to cast slightly lesser impact on the market, and we will perhaps have to start living with this new reality of oil being between 90
in 30 seconds, Mangalam, I quickly ask you which sectors are leading the fall?
Which sectors are leading the fall had to be the oil marketing companies, those oil users. We have BCCL, IOC, HPCL, we have Interglobe Aviation, which runs Indigo Airlines because jet fuel is higher. A lot of the paint companies which had seen a rally last week, that those stocks are also coming under pressure because of high oil.
Nifty down by more than 400 points, Sensex down by more than 1,300 points in early trade. The rupee is also weakened 55 paise against US dollar to really take us through the details. CNBC team, Mangalam Malu is joining us this morning. Good morning, Mangalam. All right, we'll go across to him just a bit, but this is what the markets are looking like this morning in early trade. Sensex down by more than 1,300 points, Nifty down by more than 400 points. So markets certainly reacting to President Donald Trump once again threatening disruption in the Strait of Hormuz by deploying US Navy vessels. Now, that is one that's coming from President Trump. Several US allies coming out with mixed response, and that impact is being felt by markets worldwide, including here in India. And those figures on your screens of Nifty slipping by more than 400 points, Sensex down by more than 1,300 points. So once again, what we see is a fall in Nifty and Sensex in early trade. Whether this is panic, rational correction, all that is going to be found out. And whether or not this trend stays in the next few hours, I think that is the bigger question that we're going to be focusing on. Mangalam Malu is through with us.
Welcome everyone, thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. A disturbing case from Nashik City has sent shockwaves throughout the corporate sector after several women and a male employee accused fellow colleagues in an IT firm of sustained sexual harassment, coercion and abuse of power. As per police, 8 women have come forward detailing a pattern of exploitation that allegedly continued for years. The harassment was not only limited to sexual abuse, but also religious coercion.
And I know that many people across this entire globe hope that it will be achieved someday. And I think Pakistan can continue to play a very large role in that, and what they're doing right now, chef's kiss. But they need to try to convince Donald Trump, whether it's the Qasem Munir doing that, or the other diplomats here in power, just to give a little. But I remain hopeful for peace.
Let's remain hopeful for peace. We have to be optimistic because
you sound naive, honey.
Just an anecdote, since you mentioned J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio eyeing for that presidential seat. There's a fact that all 3 vice presidents who visited Pakistan, which was Richard Nixon, George W. Bush, and Joe Biden, so you never know what future holds in the bag for J.D. Vance. But let's hope that things work out. Lori Watkins, thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to.
I mean, really and truly, when it comes to the idea of who's going to be president after Donald Trump, I genuinely think that J.D. Vance might be a decent contender. Seriously. Mainly because, he was a Democrat, now he's a Republican. Seems like, you've got the best of both worlds to a degree. Don't get me wrong. I don't know how qualified he actually is. We're still barely into the infancy of this, of his position, right? And honestly, I don't think we've had enough I don't think we've seen enough out of him. But I remain open-minded.
Insight on the people, company.
I'm just scouring
there
around.
There needs to be a deal here that leads to, I think, a sense in Israel, United States, elsewhere, that Iran cannot and will not produce a nuclear weapon.
Given the state, how many times are they going to say this? Yes, we get it. They're not going to get a nuclear weapon.
Ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran to Pakistan.
He's just running through their B-rolls.
They all made me recite the kalma while I was working at my desk. This is the kind of environment that prevailed in this office. And in collusion apparently of even the HR. He even goes on to say, in this complaint, even though they knew that I was a vegetarian, they took me to a hotel late at night and forcibly made me eat meat, saying...
Oh no!
Pressure that fellow colleagues were put under, that even their diet or diet preferences were not spared. So beef consumption, forcibly putting meat on their plate is all part of this. Now he also detailed this one particular episode where this employee says that my father suffered a paralytic stroke in March 2023. I was going through a serious family problem at that time. And what did his employees do? Tausif, Danish, Shahrukh and Raza Memon advised me to join their religion, saying that my father would recover if I did so, and that he was suffering because of, quote, Hindu Dharma. So this is, of course, coercion.
God, the poison of... I won't even get into it. These people and their damn fairy tales. It's cracked me up.
The spookiness of this correlation.
The good news, the Fed probably won't be hiking 500 basis points. And that's the good news. I say probably because you never know what's going to happen in the future, but that's the base.
And it's the pace of news that we're getting, and less bad is that the Fed is not going to hike 500 basis points.
Less bad is good news from Max Kettner of HSBC. We have about 60 minutes away. Let's get some single names and morning movers. Christina Kino has more. Hey, Christine.
Hey, John. All right, let's take a look at gold shares this morning as that's on the back. But Goldman, of course, beating its own revenue, trading revenue for equities, coming in at $5.33 billion for the first quarter. But of course, investors focusing on the disappointment from the fixed income revenue side of things. That came at just over $4 billion. Definitely what's dragging on the shares this morning. CEO David Solomon, though, calling the bank's performance, quote, very strong, but also warning of increased market volatility. Goldman, of course, kicks off Wall Street earnings this week. We have JP Morgan up next, due on Tuesday. Let's also take a look at some airline stocks, definitely in focus today as oil climbs back above $100 per barrel. You're already seeing the impact there right across the screen for the major U.S. carriers. Of course, some airlines potentially starting to feel the bite now. American Airlines raising its check-bag fees again, and so it's charging now $50 for the first bag, $60 for the second, $200 for the third. So make sure you pack light. Now, let's round us off taking a look at energy stocks this morning as well. Still very much in the green as we await the beginning of the U.S. blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern time today. Again, higher oil prices just one part of the equation here. There's also the potential disruption to these companies' operations in the Gulf. ExxonMobil already warning of a 6% loss to its global production in the first quarter. Given those disruptions, we'll get more details on that when it reports earnings on the 1st of May. John.
Christine, thank you. Great work this morning. Appreciate it. Find more from Christina Kino on the MLive blog on the Bloomberg terminal. Inevitable after moves like that in the commodity market that we see energy names up and travel names down. Charging for baggage. Do you want to do it?
Yes, I think so.
It's miserable boarding the plane because everyone is struggling to find overhead space to put their bags. And what's going to happen now? And then once they do at the gate, you want to check in your bag for...
ignoring numerous internal complaints from female Hindu employees regarding sexual harassment and religious intimidation by male senior team leaders. So there's so much wrong as far as what has been happening, religious comments, forced diet changes, coercion, plus the power equation. All of these are superiors in your office. So you can imagine the kind of pressure it creates on workers who don't want to lose their jobs.
I don't care.
Will conduct demining operations in the Strait of Hormuz to clear the mines. First of all, your quick assessment of this decision by the President of the United States.
I think that the U.S. can blockade the Strait of Hormuz. You have to remember that a blockade is an act of war. That's why during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, President Kennedy ordered a blockade, but he called it a quarantine. But if the U.S. does blockade ships coming in and out of the Strait of Hormuz, oil and gas prices are going to skyrocket. Wait till the markets open tomorrow. We're going to see the effects. Stock markets are going to plunge. Prices are going to go up. It's going to increase inflation, hurt the world economy. Whether the U.S. has the temerity to actually demine the strait, that's another question. Trump makes claims, the Iranians deny them. We don't know what's happening with that. But that I doubt. But I think we can blockade the strait at both ends.
Professor, let's go back to what happened in Pakistan yesterday. 21 hours of talks, and yet no results were yielded from that talk. J.D. Vance went back to the United States. The Iranian delegation went back to Iran. There are several countries in the Gulf who are saying that the talks should resume, and that is the Omani foreign minister. He says that talks should resume, but not war. Your assessment?
I agree entirely. War is not the answer in the nuclear age. As Prime Minister Modi repeatedly said, this is not a time of war. I guess Israel and the Trump regime did not get that message. But it's a much better solution to continue to have talks. You have to remember that when Obama negotiated the original Iran nuclear deal in 2015, those talks went on for 2 years. So the fact that this is a 21-hour marathon, maybe it's a first step. But if you look at what Vance said and Trump said, that's not a negotiating position. It's our best and final offer. And Trump says he doesn't care what happens, that the U.S. has already won. The best outcome would be if the U.S. declares victory and walks away, and they have gradual negotiations behind the scenes. But Trump is capable of anything, as is Vance, really. Vance is the one who said we have tools in our toolkit that we've never used, that we may have to use, meaning nuclear weapons. So they both are making these maximalist threats.
Professor, sorry to cut you short, but the White House did indicate that the Vice President was really not talking about nuclear weapons. They had to clarify that, so I just had to make that clear.
Oh, okay, but the experts around the world interpreted that to mean nuclear weapons. And when Trump says he's going to end the civilization within 24 hours, there's only one way to commit that genocide, and that's with nuclear weapons. So we don't know, and those just might be threats. But you can't make those kinds of threats in this era, in this age. So I understand why the Iranians don't want to give up their enriched uranium. I hope they do. They've agreed to do that in the past. What we need is to denuclearize, not to have more countries with nuclear weapons right now. 9 is more than enough.
Professor, finally, the Iranian side did indicate, and they really stressed that the American side had excessive demands that they could not fulfill. What do you actually think they meant by this excessive demands or excessive concessions?
It's interesting that so much of the discussion has been around the nuclear program and opening the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians also demanded $27 billion in frozen funds, the lifting of sanctions, and the ceasefire to extend to Lebanon and beyond. But the U.S. says Iran is refusing to give up its highly enriched uranium. We know that in the past Iran has been willing to give up its highly enriched uranium, but as part of a broader peace deal. What we need is a much more encompassing peace deal that's going to make Iran not feel so threatened by and vulnerable to attacks by Israel and the U.S. But Netanyahu doesn't want to accept that. We knew that, or I knew that Netanyahu would sabotage whatever agreement they had come to when they agreed to have the ceasefire. Netanyahu did not want a ceasefire. Netanyahu wants to overthrow the government in Iran and destroy its capabilities entirely. So what's happening now with the continued fighting is not a surprise, but it's tragic because most of the world wants to see peaceful diplomacy resolve things, not warfare. Hopefully we'll get to that. It's not out of the question, but nor is any other option right now.
All right, let's wait and see how this pans out effectively or efficiently. Professor, it's good to see you. Thank you very much for your time.
It's good to see you.
44 days ago, Strait of Hormuz was open free for all vessels to move in and out. Iran blocked it in retaliation to U.S. and Israeli strikes on its soil. Both parties agreed to open the strait under a ceasefire agreement, and now the U.S. President has himself declared a blockade of the strait. The military confrontation is looming over the crucial waterway. Here's a report.
Please keep bombing. Do it.
40 days of war, 4 days of ceasefire, and 21 hours of marathon negotiations later, the US and Iran are back to square one. Both sides failed to breach the deadlock during talks in Islamabad. Now, US President Donald Trump has ordered fresh mobilization in the Hormuz Strait. In a post on his Truth Social account, Trump announced that the U.S. Navy will impose a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. This means U.S. forces will block any and all ships that are trying to enter the crucial waterway. Trump also added that those ships who are paying a toll to Iran will not have safe passage in the high seas. Trump has vowed to force open the Strait of Hormuz. The American president says that any Iranian who attacks U.S. ships will be blown to hell. This could reopen the gates of war that are so far being held by a fragile ceasefire. Trump has issued a warning to Iran. He says that U.S. forces remain locked and loaded and will finish whatever is left of Iran. Trump is responding to a blockade with the blockade. This could send shockwaves to global oil markets due to the complete choking of the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. has previously used blockades against Venezuela and Cuba. The crown jewel of the U.S. Navy, the USS Gerald R. Ford, is back in action. It has joined the USS Abraham Lincoln and the amphibious assault ship, the USS Tripoli. American forces are already stepping up operations to open the Strait of Hormuz. Two American guided missile destroyers passed through the strait on Saturday. This was the first transit by American ships during the war and a challenge to Iran's control of the waterway. The Iranian side, however, said that the US warships were forced to escape after they issued a warning. Following the collapse of US-Iran talks in Pakistan, Israel's army chief, Ayal Zamir, has ordered heightened readiness. Israeli forces have been asked to identify fresh targets and prepare strike packages. Iran's nuclear enrichment and the Strait of Hormuz blockade remain the main sticking points. Both the US and Iran declared that no common ground had been reached during the talks in Islamabad. Is there more diplomacy to come? Will the diplomatic needle still move? Or will there be a full-blown war for the Strait of Hormuz? Bureau Report, WION. World is one.
After failed talks in Pakistan, President Donald Trump has ordered a U.S. naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. This is also in response to Tehran's refusal to give up its nuclear ambitions during the Pakistan-mediated negotiations between the U.S. and Iran. On his Truth Social, Trump said the discussions went well and most points were agreed upon. However, Tehran refused to concede on the issue of its nuclear program. Trump has declared that the United States Navy will begin the process of blockading any and all ships trying to enter or leave the Strait of Hormuz. Trump has also declared that the military would begin destroying mines laid by Iran and added that if Iran fires at the US or other vessels, it will be blown to hell. On Saturday, Trump also took to social media to announce that the United States military has started to clear the Strait of Hormuz and that all of Iran's mine-laying ships have been sunk. Trump claims the move has been announced to choke Iran's oil exports and force it to abandon its nuclear program. The action poses a severe risk to international shipping. The Naval Command of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps say that all transit and non-transit operations through the strait are under the complete control of the armed forces. Earlier in the day, Iran shared a post saying that a blockade at the Strait of Hormuz was restricting the passage. And the only way out of this self-made problem was openness and flexibility in talks. In a post on X, the Iranian embassy in Austria wrote, and I quote, "A simple explanation for those concerned. A blockade blocks. It cannot open the Strait of Hormuz, only restrict it." The post came after Trump reposted an article on Truth Social which shed light on what actions the president could take against Iran after the talks yielded no results. Since the start of the war, Iran has released several memes and AI videos mocking the President of the United States and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. From meme warfare to sarcastic diplomatic posts, Iranian officials and state-linked accounts have turned social media into a tool to shape perceptions, even as the ground reality remains complex.
44 days ago, the Strait of Hormuz was open, free for all vessels to move in and out. Iran blocked it in retaliation to US and Israeli strikes on its soil. Both parties agreed to open the strait under a ceasefire agreement. And now the US President has himself declared a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The military confrontation is looming over the crucial waterway. More about this in our next report. Take a look.
Please keep bombing. Do it.
Forty days of war. 4 days of ceasefire. And 21 days of marathon negotiations later, the US and Iran are back to square one. Both sides failed to breach the deadlock during talks in Islamabad. Now, US President Donald Trump has ordered fresh mobilization in the Hormuz Strait. In a post on his Truth Social account, Trump announced that the US Navy will impose a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. This means US forces will block any and all ships that are trying to enter the crucial waterway. Trump also added that those ships who are paying a toll to Iran will not have safe passage in the high seas. Trump has vowed to force open the Strait of Hormuz. The American president says that any Iranian who attacks US ships will be blown to hell. This could reopen the gates of war that are so far being held by a fragile ceasefire. Trump has issued a warning to Iran. He says that US forces remain locked and loaded and will finish whatever is left of Iran. Trump is responding to a blockade with the blockade. This could send shockwaves to global oil markets due to the complete choking of the Strait of Hormuz. The US has previously used blockades against Venezuela and Cuba. The crown jewel of the US Navy, the USS Gerald R. Ford, is back in action. It has joined the USS Abraham Lincoln and the amphibious assault ship, the USS Tripoli. American forces are already stepping up operations to open the Strait of Hormuz. two American-guided missile destroyers passed through the strait on Saturday. This was the first transit by American ships during the war and a challenge to Iran's control of the waterway. The Iranian side, however, said that the US warships were forced to escape after they issued a warning. Following the collapse of US-Iran talks in Pakistan, Israel's army chief, Ayal Zamir, has ordered heightened readiness.
Now,
Israeli forces have been asked to identify fresh targets. And
there is a video out there. I don't know if you've seen it. There is a video out there that is supposedly is a video of Iran scaring off the our warships. Now, I'll leave it to you to decide whether it's real or not. Looks pretty real to me. But we all know that Iran is oftentimes full of shit. But yeah, this is the supposed video right here.
This is Sepah Navy Station. You must alter course and go back to the Indian Ocean immediately. If you don't obey my order, you will be targeted. Out.
This is Coalition Warship 121. Engage in transit passage in accordance with international law. No challenge is intended to you.
U.S. Navy warship transiting in the vicinity Fujairah Port and Oman Sea. This is Sepah Navy. This is Sepah Navy. Last warning, last warning, last warning. Attention all vessels, attention all vessels, attention all vessels in Oman Sea. This is Iranian Sepah Navy. If you see any warship in your vicinity, keep a distance more than 10 miles from them because I'm ready to open fire on them without any warning.
Now, I'll let you decide whether that's real or not. I'm not sure. I don't know who to believe when it comes to the BS that they pump out. There's just no telling. There's another map of hundreds of supertankers that are racing towards the U.S. Gulf Coast from every direction. The world is coming to America for oil. Hundreds of supertankers, the kind that carry 2 million barrels each, are currently converging on the U.S. Gulf Coast from every direction. Atlantic, Indian Ocean, around Africa. Supertankers that were mid-ocean heading to the Persian Gulf literally turned around and headed to Texas. Ship tracking data shows them doing U-turns in the Indian Ocean. With the Strait of Hormuz officially closed and Middle Eastern supply frozen, the world is turning to American crude as the emergency lifeline. The cost of booking a supertanker from the U.S. Gulf Coast to China just hit $17.3 million, the highest since 2020. Most Middle Eastern crude oil bound for Asia is a 21-day voyage from the Persian Gulf. From the United States, over 50 days. These tankers are paying double the transit time because American oil is the only game left. Trump turned America into the world's gas station. The tankers are literally lining up. Energy dominance isn't a slogan anymore. It's a satellite image. Now, the argument that I hear most about this is this isn't usable for gasoline. Well, you know what? They're buying it. So, you know, I don't think it matters if it's usable for gasoline. They're buying it for whatever they want to use it for. And the United Arab Emirates pulls $3.5 billion from Pakistan after the Iran war mediation. Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. We are currently about 37 minutes out from market opening. What will today bring? Well, I think that much is obvious. It looks like Bitcoin is taking a jump. I wonder what's fueling that. 21 minutes ago, Bitcoin, XRP, Ethereum fall, huh? Yeah. Iran peace failure causes crypto headache. Yeah, well, what do you call this right here? I call that a little bit of a rebound. It doesn't mean much yet, though. We'll see how that unfolds. Looks like oil's coming down a little bit as the this 10 o'clock blockade looms. It is on the way. 10 a.m. is when that blockade goes into effect. Dollar coming down a little bit. Silver going up. Let's go back over to some news and see what these jerks are talking about.
And we know that's an easy way to pass the buck for a later time. Just kick the ball to the future because it escapes the responsibility right now to condemn it. Prima facie, if these allegations are correct, then there should be greater social condemnation. There's one section that goes.
I can't stand to listen to whoever that is running their friggin' mouth. Mediate. Get your people quiet, woman.
That the growth dynamic is going to be hit stocks harder than it is going to be hitting bonds. And so that's the sort of way to neutralize yourself to that inflation pressure and still make that bet on the very high expectations of growth that's in the market.
Bob, May 1, does the physical paper market catch up to the physical market?
Well, I think so. I mean, look, the true barrels being traded right now are trading at $140 a barrel, right? In terms of at the end of last week. And we're talking about bringing possibly up to another 4, 5, or 6 million barrels off the market by May 1st as those various elements roll off and if this blockade continues. That's probably, the old rule of thumb is $5 to $7 a barrel per million. We're talking about incredibly high spot prices that are facing this economy if this doesn't get resolved quickly.
Bob, it's good to see you. Thanks for breaking this down. Bob Elliott there of Unlimited Funds. At the end there, just this ongoing 1 month rolling disconnect between the front end of the futures curve and a physical market. And the closer you get to expiration, it's like the wake-up call. Hello, physical world, you've got a clear demand and supply, and that number is a whole lot higher.
That gap has never been wider. I mean, when that spot price reached $144 a barrel, it had never been wider versus the paper market. So at some point you have to imagine it reconciles at the same time. They're talking about talks, things are pace of bad news isn't getting that much more significant, so people are getting a little bit excited.
And this blockade is real, according to U.S. Central Command. They're issuing notices this morning saying that a vessel going in and out, you're subject to interception, diversion, and capture.
Things could get tense over the next 24 hours, that's for sure. That blockade is set to begin in 1 hour and 5 minutes' time. Tomorrow, we'll have numbers from JP Morgan and a whole host of other banks as well, Wells Fargo and Citi the day after you'll hear from Bank of America and Morgan Stanley. We'll break it down with the following guests: Brian Levitt of Invesco, Joanne Cassidy of RBC, Alicia Levine of BNY, and the Port of LA Executive Director Gene Soroka joining the program as well. Equity
escort mission, and an effort by a multinational force to open the strait until there is a sense that the ceasefire is going to last. And that's simply because this strait is narrow, it's shallow, it's dangerous, and until the parties in question, both the shippers but also the warships, until they have a sense that there is a durable peace, I don't think you're going to see them sailing back and forth through the Strait of Hormuz.
Right, Dr. Kaplan, while the Strait of Hormuz is one sticking point, another is of course nuclear. And the US says that Iran's refusal to commit to never developing a nuclear weapon was the key obstacle in the talks. But Iran has long denied seeking one. And after these two wars in the span of one single year, do you think that the voices within Iran arguing for a nuclear deterrent may now feel vindicated and emboldened even?
Well, there's no question that Iran got attacked in part because it was getting close to having the capability to produce a nuclear weapon, but it didn't have a nuclear weapon. So one of the reasons that you're seeing military action against Iran, but not military action against North Korea, is that North Korea already has the bomb. So yes, there is a logic here that would give added incentive to Iranian officials to say, see, we really do need to get the bomb, we need to race to the bomb. We've got 1,000 pounds of highly enriched uranium, let's rush to break out. But I do think that this is an issue that is kind of make or break for both sides. Because Donald Trump cannot walk away from this conflict with Iran holding that highly enriched uranium, with Iran continuing to enrich uranium. There needs to be a deal here that leads to, I think, a sense in Israel, United States, elsewhere, that Iran cannot and will not produce a nuclear weapon. Given the statements that came out of the meeting in Pakistan, we're not even close, right? The Iranians are talking about reparations. They're talking about enrichment. They're talking about a whole agenda that bears no resemblance to the demand that J.D. Vance and Washington is making. And that's why I think one can come away from these talks in Pakistan worried about the next steps.
Of course, Andrew, this has been a war of many unintended consequences, Dr. Kaplan, and Israel and Lebanon have also emerged as a growing flashpoint here. Do you think the collapse of the Islamabad talks, they could spill over into these negotiations as well and perhaps further complicate efforts to prevent a wider regional escalation?
But I think for now, Israel will continue to take strikes against Lebanon. Israel has said that they don't see the conversation that's taking place is including Lebanon. And now that those talks have broken down, in some ways there's even less pressure on Israel to hold back and to use diplomacy rather than force. That having been said, I think it's good news that Israel is prepared to open negotiations with the Lebanese government about the disarmament of Hezbollah. And number two, if we do get progress on the diplomacy, if we do see the United States and Iran finding common ground a week from now, 2 weeks from now, I do think that the United States, if it needs to, would put pressure on Israel to stop the bombing of Lebanon if it's necessary for durable truce. We're not there yet, but if the diplomacy does pick up speed, I'm guessing that will be one sidebar of that negotiation.
Absolutely, Dr. Kaplan, you've raised some very important questions, but of course we'll have to wait to see and how the situation develops from here. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your perspective with us.
Pleasure to be with you. Bye-bye.
Negotiations between the United States and Iran have ended without a peace agreement. We are already in the fifth day of 14-day ceasefire that was declared by President Trump following his end of civilization deadline to Iran. Despite superior firepower, the US has failed to impose its will on Iran militarily as well as diplomatically. Iran has refused to accept US's demands and has stood its ground to hold negotiations on its own terms. Iran's Speaker of Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, says the US fails to gain the trust of the Iranian delegation during Islamabad negotiations. Why is Iran refusing to cede ground despite US siding claim the US or the Americans claiming victory? The reason lies in its strategic and economic advantage it holds over US. First, let's talk about the strategy Iran is engaging in non-conventional warfare tactics. It is wearing down US by mere survival, making the military confrontation longer than what Washington would like to engage in. Iran's enriched uranium remains a point of concern for the United States. The country's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi earlier claimed that uranium is sitting beneath the rubble that was created by US strikes on its nuclear program.
I'm not so sure I buy that.
Any operation to retrieve this enriched uranium will require US to put boots on the ground. The risk-to-reward ratio of such a move is still being figured out by Washington. Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz is now being challenged by US President Donald Trump. He has ordered the blockade of the strait, but choking the Strait of Hormuz also hits economies of Gulf's most powerful nations.
It sure does.
Iran's navy
mainly China
suffered major losses, but it does not require much firepower to keep the threat alive in the Strait of Hormuz. One strike on a commercial vessel and the rest will stay put.
Yeah, pretty much. Insurance companies aren't wanting to cover these guys right now. And this is all being done because Iran doesn't have the right to do this. This is international waters. So what we need is the larger world community to jump in. But nobody wants to because everybody's chicken shit.
Rejected the U.S. President's warning and described the blockade threat as ridiculous and funny. However, despite the dismissive tone, Iran indicated that the country views such actions as a serious provocation that could destabilize the already fragile regional security environment surrounding the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical energy corridors.
Yeah, they talk a big game on social media they've got a fair amount of useful idiots convinced that they're winning this war.
Iran's Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf also declared that Iran will not bow to any form of external pressure or threats. He warned that the country is fully prepared to respond militarily if its sovereignty or maritime interests are challenged. At the same time, he added that Iran remains open to dialogue if negotiations are based on mutual respect and logical engagement rather than coercion or ultimatums.
Yeah. Iran knows how to work the public. They know how to work the media, and they've done a very good job at doing that. Looks like Bitcoin is taking a jump up. Will it last? It really needs to push through all this red before I would consider it anything meaningful. Brent is still relatively the same as it's been since, about 3 a.m. This blockade that will be going into effect at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, less than an hour now. We will see the futures market jump, I'm sure, as the rest of the world flocks to the United States. This is what the UAE is pitching. They are discussing this idea, a very ambitious idea, I might add, to create their own strait, to create their own little Panama Canal, if you will. This is a very ambitious idea. Obviously, it wouldn't happen overnight. It's estimated to be very expensive, too. But if anybody in the world's got money, it's this jackass right here. And while it's good to have this jackass on our side, he is a piece of human garbage. Don't forget that. Don't forget who you're talking to. And then, of course, we've got this beautiful map right here. This is the map of the Gulf of Mexico, or the Gulf of America, however you choose to call it. Of all the ships around the world that have literally turned around and are headed to our ports, they are taking on twice as long of a journey in order to do this. They have literally been U-turning in the ocean and coming to our ports to get our oil. I know it's been argued that, that oil's not fit for gasoline. Yeah, that's what some people are saying, but they're still buying it, aren't they? And there's plenty of companies who have already developing ways to process that Venezuelan oil that we got, because it wasn't suitable for gas either at first. It's either Sunoco or Conoco, I can't remember which, and then Phillips and somebody else, and they've all secured contracts to buy that oil. So they're doing something with it. But yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing. We're gaining leverage in this whole thing. But do you think that ultimately this is going to play out in our favor? Maybe. Comment below what you think. I would love to discuss it.
That capability. That's all focused from our point of view on getting the straits fully open. I want to be really clear about that. And the reason for that is because that's the way we get energy prices down as quickly as possible.
France and Britain are working on a peaceful multinational mission to restore traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, with French President Emmanuel Macron saying this would be separate from warring parties. The UK-French initiative, which Mr Macron announced on X, is a conference encompassing countries willing to support a peaceful multinational mission in the Strait of Hormuz. The proposed mission aims to restore freedom of navigation and would be strictly defensive, operating separately from parties involved in the conflict. The move comes after US President Donald Trump ordered his Navy to carry out a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz starting today.
At 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has received a telephone call from Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. The two leaders discussed the Islamabad talks, with Prime Minister Takaichi saying she appreciated Pakistan's diplomatic role in facilitating the two-week ceasefire and the talks that aimed at securing a lasting peace. She also expressed Japan's full support for the peace process and its importance for regional stability and global energy security.
The Pakistani Prime Minister expressed gratitude to the US and Iranian delegations for their extensive discussions in Islamabad and reiterated Pakistan.
Sure is nice to hear someone talking nice and softly, as opposed to the news coming out of India.
Alliances as some of our traditional support from NATO nations falls away.
It's very important. Finland's a good ally to stand by. When I was there, they were a partnership for peace country. I've always been involved with joint exercises with Finland. More importantly, they have a concept in the country amongst their men called sisu. And sisu is Finnish for a warrior's ethos, for a courage that exists that they've had to display. They're the only ones to militarily defeat in the last century the Russians in the two wars. And so, no, everything we do with Finland militarily is great. They have a very, very effective military and high-end equipment. They know what they're doing.
So the Secretary has stepped behind closed doors with this top diplomat out of Finland. We'll wait on a debrief. We tend to get them after these bilateral meetings, so we'll be waiting that throughout the morning here. Meanwhile, pivoting back to the Strait, what happens, Harley, when a Chinese tanker, say 10:30, 11 o'clock this morning, tries to move through the Strait and move supplies, oil? What happens then?
Well, by all reports, President Trump has said he's going to interdict all naval shipping in the Gulf. So this is what's in the Straits of Hormuz. So I think they're going to stop the Chinese ship, which is, I think, speaks to, on a bigger picture, we saw that President Trump showed strategic courage by taking on the Iranian regime when every American president before him kicked the can down the road.
On average, one person is killed by mines or other explosive devices every hour.
Like in all wars.
In places like South Sudan, the UN's Mine Action Service is working to find and destroy.
Trump showing strategic resolve, that he's not just saying, okay, we won, we're pulling out, which would have been a catastrophe. He's upping the ante, if you will. He's saying to Iran, you say you don't want to close, you say you don't want to open the Straits of Hormuz, well, then we'll close it, and we'll make sure you don't get tolls, and we'll take the minesweepers and clear it. So President Trump has really stepped up to keep an international waterway open, which is a major choke point for the world economy. President Trump had to do this, because if he didn't, and the international waters closed, it could bring on an economic catastrophe in the weeks.
It sure could. I'm going to go over to the UN, the UN's live channel, which is fairly interesting, I might add.
The remains of 3 UN peacekeepers killed in Lebanon were returned to their home country of Indonesia. They were killed in 2 separate incidents. Indonesia's president received the fallen peacekeepers with military honors. Gaza is still facing hunger issues. According to the World Food Program, about 1.6 million people are facing acute levels of food insecurity. That's about 77% of the population.
Yeah, well, you know what they say about that. I won't get into it.
We did one only because they broke their word, they broke their promise. And remember, their promise was that they were going to open the Hormuz Strait. They didn't do it. They lied.
So is that the goal here, General? You know, really choke off. We're talking about choking off Iran, but in essence, you're choking off Beijing at the same time. How does this end? The president isn't negotiating any further. Choke off Beijing, choke off Iran economically.
Beijing will stay on the sidelines for now. I'm sure there's been coordination before. They're going to get the straits open. The U.S. military will get the straits open. What the president's saying is...
Yeah, and they're currently, this is adding pressure to China to turn around and try and convince Iran to knock it off and to come back to the table, which I think is probably the best strategy we could afford right now, is to try and force China to talk with their little buddy Iran.
Civil war in Ireland. You have the very strange elections in Hungary that ended with Orban's demise, and a lot of power shifting all over the continent, and that is related to what we see in those straits. It's global. It's not a regional.
You are so right. It's been fascinating. 48 hours indeed. Brigadier General Blaine Holt and foreign policy expert Hartley Lippman. Gentlemen, thanks so much for jumping on this morning.
Thank you.
Eric Swalwell's run for governor of the state of California, it is imploding. Dozens of former staffers, they're asking him to step down now after accusations of sexual assault. Also reports that China is shipping weapons to Iran. So what the president says he will do if in fact that is the case. More news now.
It is definitely the case. They've been doing that.
A career politician at the same time, Israel and the U.S. is able to target its civilians.
Now Lebanon said Israeli strikes on central Beirut have killed at least 6 people and wounded more than 20.
I'm going to go over to Bloomberg and listen to some money. Okay, well, I don't need the song playing so that YouTube can charge me a nickel every time it plays. They're on commercial anyway. Yeah, it seems like everybody's just kind of in commercial mode at the moment. I'm going to go over here and listen to some Indian propaganda. Why don't we? If I can find it. I've got too many things open here. There we go.
May not have been this partisan, but when the election commission says,
now you come to the point. So everything is the same, the norm is the same, the process is the same, the data is the same. But you don't trust this election commission, now you're saying we need more data. Okay, all right. Now
I'm sorry, but people give me a damn headache listening to them. Every time I turn that news station on, they're just running their mouths and crying, and they just cannot maintain civility in their discussion. So currently, we're looking at a mostly red or flat day. I mean, there's a little bit of green over here in the tech sector, but by and large, the shining gem of the market today is going to be in energy. We all know it. Oil is going to continue to go up. Bitcoin looks like it's building a nice looking flag. We shall see how that pans out. Silver and gold relatively flat. Gold's taking a little bit of a jump up. And everybody in the news seems like they're on commercial.
To Newsmax Plus today.
Everybody. Let's see what the UN is saying.
And neutrality of the organization.
UN Insider.
Huh? They are also in commercial. Trying to find somebody with some news. Middle East ceasefire. Here we go.
Across Asia slipped on Monday as investors reacted to ongoing geopolitical uncertainty in the Middle East. Japan's benchmark Nikkei fell at the open while South Korea's Kospi dropped more than 2%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index also declined, and China's Shanghai Composite edged lower.
All this is costing everybody
was
money.
the exception, showing volatility but managing brief gains in early trade. Analysts say markets are becoming increasingly sensitive to prolonged conflict, particularly due to the risk of rising oil prices.
We are at the tipping point. And we are currently the world is really at a crisis mode, and we need to be prepared for that.
Experts warn that sectors heavily reliant on fuel, including airlines, transportation, and manufacturing, are likely to face the greatest pressure.
We don't know what's going to open up again. Yeah. So at the moment, this is going to a lot of pressure on the stock market, of course. So you're going to see, especially markets like in Japan, in Korea, in India, those markets are going to be hit hard. Especially sectors that heavily rely on oil, right? So transportation. Sectors such as airlines, such as transportation, consumer cyclicals, chemicals, those sectors are going to be hit the hardest.
Yeah, I think we can all guess that.
our terms.
President Trump says beginning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time today, the United States Navy, the finest in the world, will begin the process of blockading any ships trying to enter or leave the Strait of Hormuz. Trump says other countries will also be involved in this blockade. The president says the continued closure of the strait following last week's ceasefire deal amounts to world extortion. And he's instructing the Navy to seek and stop every vessel in international waters that has paid a toll to Iran.
We're going to see who steps up. But I'm pretty convinced that the rest of the world is just too chicken shit to take on Iran.
Will be blown to hell.
But there are many boats heading toward our country to fill up with oil and then go and take it. So they're not going to go through the Hormuz Strait. And ultimately that will be corrected. But in the meantime, they're using us. We have more oil because of drill, baby drill. We have more oil than Russia and Saudi Arabia put together.
A lot of oil.
Iran's chief negotiator in Islamabad, Parliament Speaker Mohammad Ghalibaf says, enjoy the current pump figures. With the so-called blockade, soon you'll be nostalgic for $4 to $5 gas. And to highlight this, Ghalibaf even posting a Google Maps picture of gas prices near the White House that says $4 and $5 a gas at different gas stations here in Washington. While President Trump says, despite all of this, the ceasefire is holding well and says, I don't care if Iran returns to the negotiating table. But as we mentioned, Shannon, coming up at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, U.S. blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Reportedly, U.S. Navy ships will allow ships to still transit the strait if they are not going to Iranian ports. We'll see what happens at the top of the hour.
Mike Carter on the North Lawn watching it closely for us today. Mike, appreciate you as always. Meanwhile, as Congress in Washington does return from this 2-week recess they've had, lawmakers, they are dealing with a packed agenda, including one member facing potential expulsion. You heard from him moments ago here on our broadcast, the once leading Democrat hopeful for California Governor, Representative Eric Swalwell, now dropping out of the race for governor, facing multiple allegations of sexual assault and misconduct. Swalwell posted on X, to my family, my staff, friends, and supporters, I am deeply sorry for mistakes in judgment I have made in my past, he wrote. I will fight the serious false allegations that have been made, but that is my fight, he wrote, not a campaign. So with that, he is out. He's now facing, though, growing calls from both Democrats and Republicans to resign from Congress or face being ousted. I want to bring in Deputy Political Editor at Breitbart News, Bradley Jay. Also with us this morning, Republican strategist and CEO of Compass Strategies, Luke Ball. Good to see you both. Good morning to you. So 4 women now have accused Swalwell of rape and sexual assault. Of course, he's denying the allegations. You heard him a moment ago at the top of our block here. One accuser, though, appeared on CNN recounting her disturbing encounter. Watch this.
I can see flashes of that evening, of him on top of me pushing him off, him grabbing me.
You know,
it was a lot more aggressive.
You know, I'm not going to speculate on whether or not, I'm not going to speculate on the validity of these claims. I'm not on the up and up on the story. I haven't really been following it. All I will point out, though, just to play devil's advocate, every time there is somebody in a position to affect any real change to the status quo or anything going on in the world, that's a big deal. There's always some sort of smear campaign. Now, it happened with Russell Brand. He started talking a little too much about Israel, and then boom, sexual harassment cases came up. They were all ended up being dismissed. Obviously, this one's a little bit more high profile, but just take that into consideration. I'm just playing the devil's advocate. I'm not saying that she's lying. I'm just saying that you have to be a little more skeptical when it comes to politics and these claims, because these claims just tend to show up every single time. Now, I don't know. I'm not even familiar with the guy. Okay? I'm not even familiar with the guy. enough to comment on whether or not I think it's valid. But I'm just saying, apply this to everybody in all cases like this. Take it with a grain of salt. Don't let it determine how you vote.
There's a standard for one. There should be a standard for all. Yes?
Yeah, I'll address that in a moment, but to Bradley's point, when I was working on Capitol Hill 2, these rumors were ran about Eric Swalwell. And the worst kept secret in Washington is apparently also the worst kept secret in California, and that's according to the politicians surrounding Eric and also the reporters surrounding him, which begs the question, why is it just now coming out? Why were these people running cover for them? It reminds me of the Joe Biden scandal, whenever you had individuals who were going out and lying in the press, lying in his administration, saying he was totally competent, he was totally above board. And I think, as you were just saying, that there should be a standard in both parties. This transcends party lines. The practicality of it is that Republicans have such a slim majority that are we going to expel members of our Congress willy-nilly and give up the majority to Democrats who are going to come in and institute policies that are pro-abortion and other things? I don't believe that that's the correct course of action here, but it's going to be curious to see that if the Democrats apply the same standard to Eric Swalwell that they have demanded of other people like MTG or Corey Mill.
I got you now. Breaking news, the U.S. struck Iran's water plant, one of Iran's water plants, impacting the supply of nearly 30 villages. Very interesting indeed.
What do you think as you look down the lens, Bradley, to midterms? How does this affect, more importantly, talking about control of the House and that?
Iran confirms attacks on the UAE and Kuwait, says retaliation for strike on Lavin Island. I'm just looking for some news stories worthwhile.
Who are voting on these critical topics and shaping our nation. Bradley, that's to you.
Well, I've been involved in politics long enough to immediately be somewhat skeptical of anyone who would willingly subject themselves to run for elected office. Look, I think that the effect this will have on the midterms, if it has any at all, is just
I don't think that it's really of a great concern to too many people right now, with all the things that's going on in the world.
A short while ago, but from different pockets of Noida, of Gautam Buddha Nagar, protests are being reported from industrial areas where workers like this have gathered. And in fact, administration has also set up a committee. They have looked into the matter and come out with the directions to these companies that certain demands need to be met with immediate effect.
I had to make sure I have clipped out their QR code that they've got going on. This is a foreign news channel. I would not suggest anybody scan any QR code on a foreign news channel. So just to be safe, I got rid of it. The QR code you see on your screen is my QR code. That if you happen to want to make a donation, don't do it through YouTube or Rumble's super chat service. They take like almost 40%.
How they are torching many vehicles and also some of the products that are kept there in outside the factory. And what you can see right now, a person carrying the board of Hamari Mange Puri Karo.
Thanks for tuning in to CNN News 18. I'm Nabila Jamal. You're watching Brass Tacks.
I love how they call it CNN when they're just straight up ripped off America.
A deal here that leads to, I think, a sense in Israel, United States, elsewhere, that Iran cannot and will not produce a nuclear weapon. Given the statements that came out.
The blockade to go in effect at 10 a.m. today, Eastern Standard Time. That's roughly 30 minutes from now. And we are about 2 minutes away from the opening bell. What do you think is going to bring about, what do you think is going to come of today? I'm going to go over to Bloomberg just because all this politics and everything is kind of diluting the money aspect of the market here. And I'm going to cut the music out because they want to charge me a nickel every damn time it plays. All right, so Bitcoin looks like it's taking a little bit of a jump up, building a nice, pretty flag right here. And it looks like we got a home sales report coming today at 10 a.m. I don't think that's really the main focus of today, but Brent oil maintaining its sideways action, as is the nano crude oil futures. Silver sort of a jump up. IBM. But there's a lot of red and flat sideways action today. The energy sector is a clear winner, has been for a while now. And we are less than a minute away from the opening bell.
Capacity, and it's very tough to build.
Everybody wants to get things going. The IPO market is just one symptom of that. It is an early indicator of what we're going to see in the M&A market. Let's go to Scarlet Foods. Taking a closer look at drone companies with ongoing conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine. There's renewed investor appetite for new names in this space. Excellent reporting. I'm Danny Berger, and this is Bloomberg Deals. Every week, only on Bloomberg Television.
Investors, top executives, global innovators. Join me for in-depth conversations with the biggest newsmakers on the day's top stories. Insight with Linda Ahmed, only on Bloomberg.
Get your fixed income fix. Watch Bloomberg Real Yield around the world right here on Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
Let's have it. Boom. There it is.
We're moments away from the start of trading on Wall Street. This is Bloomberg Open Interest. I'm Matt Miller. We're looking at futures that are still down, but even less so now. Only 0.3% on the S&P. NASDAQ futures down about 0.25%. This after it looked like talks failed in Islamabad. President Trump said he doesn't care if the Iranians come back to the table. He's going to block the Strait of Hormuz. Anyway, although the Iranians now said they are willing to come back for talks. You hear the opening bell down at the NASDAQ market site. Live on New York is like an organ donor foundation. They're celebrating like legends of the organ donor cause. And Phil Lesh, the bassist, former bassist for the Grateful Dead, rest in peace, was a huge organ donor dude, which you know if you went to any Dead shows, Danny. Everybody's looking at this big D with what looks like a marijuana leaf in the center, but it's not. At least I assume it's not, because recreational marijuana is still illegal in Texas. This is a business group of people with the mayor of Dallas right there in the center, Eric Johnson, ringing the bell, New York Stock Exchange, celebrating Y'all Street. But on Wall Street. So I think it's kind of interesting. And I didn't realize they opened it up like that.
With Exit.
Pretty cool.
They should probably wait till the cameras are rolling.
They're all splitting.
There you go. Maybe it was like a green torch or something. I'm not sure what that was. Anyway, Matt, I'm looking at shares of Goldman Sachs are down nearly 4%, despite the fact it had a huge blockbuster quarter for equity trading, $5.3 billion, blowing out the previous high water mark, which was themselves last quarter. PHEMEX, maybe that's why there's some concerns. David Solomon also talking about geopolitical concerns leading to them allowing them to be a little bit more cautious. The earnings call kicks off right as we speak. So,
all right, so looks like ConocoPhillips is jumping up a little bit. This is likely due to they've got a lot of recent oil contracts that they are going to benefit from. I'm pretty sure they're one of the major players in the oil, or one of the major buyers in the oil that we seized from Venezuela. It was said that oil cannot be used for gasoline, but they claimed, amongst two others, I do believe, they claimed to have some sort of method to render it usable for gasoline. Not entirely sure of that claim. I forget where I heard it, so I'm not going to say that it's 100% true because I can't remember where I heard it. Pretty sure it came from a reputable source. I just can't remember what the source was, and I don't want to give you any false information. Bitcoin's still looking like it's building on that bull flag. Oil futures looking relatively flat. Heat map for the day is looking like it was, and I guess I should put it on regular hours. There we go. Here we go. There we go. Manufacturing's got a little bit of a jump up, but everything, all the moves that we're seeing are relatively small. There aren't really any major big moves going on, even in the energy sector. I think everybody's just waiting until 10 to see how this, what do you call it, how this blockade pans out. Because this is some wild shit. Wild times, crazy times to be alive. Comment below and tell me what you'd like me to take a look at.
I cut the bottom-up consensus for earnings over that time period by 5%. Just a haircut, just kind of an arbitrary haircut. I also, for the PE assumption, baked in 3.3% inflation. That does nothing, and 10-year yields of 4.5%. So I can still make the math work. Even within that assumption, though, we are looking for a market that, if it is going to climb higher, has to be on the backs of a solid economy and a solid earnings backdrop that can take some damage from what's going on in the Middle East, but not too much. Obviously, we're kind of walking along the razor's edge, but that is what the math is telling us right now.
It's also a market that really has not, I mean, at least for equities, experienced much stress. We didn't get anything close to a 10% drop, maybe around 7%, which I guess you could round down to 10. But still, we didn't get a correction. I was reading through Michael and Morgan Stanley's call, basically saying, buy any dip, and I was looking, what was the dip? And his sort of thesis is that there was one. You had more than half of Russell 3000 stocks that were down at least 20%. Earnings multiples fell 18% from the October peak. So, Lori, was that us pricing it into the market?
So on our calculations, if you look from the late January high on the S&P to the low we had in March, it was a 9.1% drop. That's within what we call a Tier 1 garden variety pullback. We characterize a growth scare as 14 to 20%. We've had 5 of those since the financial crisis, 2010, 2011, 15, 16, 18, and 2025. While my target, I think is pretty similar to Mike's, I would respectfully disagree with him on the idea that we hit a hold your nose and buy moment from either a valuation or a sentiment perspective. Now, we do think that the froth came out of the market on both of those, which permitted, when the narrative changed on the war, to...
We've got some green going on in the tech sector. Not bad. Not bad. Manufacturing sector's doing okay. The electronic tech is not looking too bad. The major players are down, but... this is looking pretty good. Palantir, Oracle, Meta, energy sector doing all right. Now, if you are new here, this red list, my red list over here, these are companies that are suppliers to SpaceX. And I got this red list set up ahead of the IPO, SpaceX IPO that they've been talking about forever, that is now rumored to be going live in June or July. Is it really? Who knows? We shall see. But eventually they will. It's going to be the largest IPO in the history of the world. Anyway, if you want to get in on it, whether or not they IPO, these companies right here, these are a few of the biggest suppliers out of SpaceX's 2,000 different companies that they deal with. You've got Broadcom, which is, you should already know about Broadcom. They're ST Microelectronics, Astronics, which is one of my favorite named companies. I love Astronics. I think Astronics is a great name for a company, especially the part about Astronics. Then, of course, they deal with NVIDIA. And this company right here is a South Korean company called Bastille. I don't know which one of these is the one you'd want to look at. You can't invest in these in the American market. You'd have to go to the South Korean market to invest. I couldn't tell you the ins and outs of doing that. Not financial advice. But they are who SpaceX gets the majority of their metals from, not just steel. ConocoPhillips took a jump. Looks like gold is holding its little jump that it took, as is silver. Dollar's coming down, which is probably why. Oil's going to continue to run sideways until something major happens today. And Bitcoin's coming right back down. So much for that flag, huh? Heat map looking pretty good, and we'll go back over to the news, see what Bloomberg's talking about.
This thing can get done within, and it's not going to really damage earnings all that much. Now, we don't know exactly what that window is, and to be fair, a lot of companies have not really been hit with direct impact yet, so that too may change once they actually start to get into the suit.
We did ask Danny a congressman.
You know, there's this deadline, they're calling it a deadline for 10 a.m. in the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians aren't going to pay any attention to that. They aren't going to pay any attention to that. You might as well just go in there and do what you do.
I was having this discussion with someone over the weekend. This idea that the oil that's been shipped out, that is now reaching shores, has until this point had been pre-crisis levels. Now we're finally getting barrels of oil on the market that are priced at the $140 coming through the Strait of Hormuz. So when companies report earnings, will they?
Vote, or rather, I can't call that a vote because it's far from a democracy. I'm aware of that. But consolidate your following.
Consolidated, but also completely degraded. So when you have a country that has a doomsday philosophy and you destroy all of their nuclear scientists, they say, this strengthens our nuclear program. You sink their entire navy. They say, our navy is strengthened. You kill their top generals. The moderates are gone. Here are the hardliners. But at the end of the day, all of our enemies are dead, and the next group of people are dead. And eventually, if the final group of people can't work with us financially, we're going to kill them too. So it comes down to a situation of just an incongruent amount of force. So now we're in the negotiation time frame. We understand that perhaps regime change in the George Bush, Dick Cheney hearts and minds is impossible. But regime change vis-a-vis that person is no longer here and there's a new person. Eventually we will find somebody who we can work with. And if not,
but Trump himself says regime change was not on the agenda.
It was hoped for. The ideal situation would have been, of course, they come out in the streets and there's a revolution. It wasn't as though we didn't want such a thing. It was that statistically it was unlikely. We had to work within the purview of that. The clerics and the mullahs have become very, very popular in the last 47, 48 years. And the 7 U.S. presidents...
Popular by who?
Which is incredibly politically unpopular, by the way. He's not gaining any votes for the midterm. He's not helping his short-term things. He's doing this because he feels like it's the right thing to do for the global security situation. And the short-term economic pain, well felt by our allies, is also felt by Americans. So it is something that we're aware of, but something that we are willing to do in the long run, even though we know it does put you in a bad spot.
Yeah, that's true.
Speaking of the economic meltdown that we're anticipating, we're not yet there. We know the situation could get worse. How long before you think it will start pinching Indian households?
It will. Right now, the oil prices have not been passed on, but there is a shortage of gas. We are seeing MSMEs, smaller units shutting down because of lack of industrial gas. Fertilizer is our big issue.
Just so you know, that 20-minute countdown that you're looking at, or are you looking at it? Yeah, that 20-minute countdown, sorry, that's right there. That is how long until this blockade goes into effect, and I'm anxious to see what happens. I am definitely anxious to see how this goes down. I don't know what other cards we've got to play left in our arsenal other than just, going in full steam ahead and just blasting them all to hell, which it might come to that. It certainly might come to that. What do you think? Should we? Should we blow the hell out of Iran?
On Iran. Is there any clarification on his warning?
It's up to Iran to make that decision whether or not it wants to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has appealed the US President Donald Trump to extend the deadline 2 weeks. Prime Minister said
I am eager to find some decent news regarding everything that's going on. We're not going to hear very much until about 10 o'clock.
Shortage
so stay with me.
5 years from now because of AI data centers in the Pacific Northwest. That is much. That 9
gigawatts. Definitely see something going on.
The entire state of Oregon uses in a single year. So it's a big problem. Communities are pushing back, and that's why Elon Musk wants to put this stuff up into space where it's super cool and the heat won't.
Yeah.
And India sent most of the rice. If the ships are not allowed, you would have a starvation issue in Iran. So the biggest losers are Iranian people. Second is the Gulf nations. GDPs will fall anything from 10 to 20%.
The Iranian people have been saying, you talk to most of the people in Iran on the street. Most Iranians despise Islam. Most Iranian people hate the IRGC. And many Iranian people, I've seen the videos myself of the people in Iran, begging the United States, do not stop bombing, because they realize that they're at a crucial tipping point in their society. This is why Trump, in the beginning of all this, said, take your government back now. Which I really want to see this for the Iranian people. That's my entire reason for supporting this war, is just for the Iranian people. All the other stuff, to me, is second fiddle. The Islamic Republic of Iran needs to go. They have needed to go for a long time. They're responsible for the vast majority of all of the death in the Middle East. You know, you can make the argument that Netanyahu and Israel's bad and yada, yada, yada. But look, man, the truth of the matter is, these animals that Iran pays, they're all animals. Let's get that straight. Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, all of them. Those are three of an unknown amount of independent little militias and groups that Iran funds to destroy Israel. Why do they want to destroy Israel? Well, they've got a 1,000-year-old prophecy that tells them that their Messiah isn't going to come back until the world is in chaos and Israel's destroyed. That's what fuels all of this, every bit of it. Now, these jackals stash weapons in places like hospitals and schools, civilian locations. They do this intentionally so that when Israel retaliates, they can say, look, Israel's shooting our schools and our hospitals. So they can dominate the narrative, which I might add, Iran has done quite well. Because if you're on social media at all, you know Iran's winning the meme war. And they are swaying the useful idiots in their direction. I've seen it myself. There's way too many Americans that are rooting for Iran right now. It's like these people were born yesterday and don't know anything about anything except for what they've seen recently on Facebook. It's sickening. It's so sickening. The Islamic Republic of Iran must die. Sorry. They need to go. They need to go. Theocratic nonsense is poison. It is poison to the planet. It is poison to the world. And those that are affected the most are the Iranian people. And they want it gone. Like I said, most rational Iranian citizens despise Islam. By and large, they're not Islamic. Go ahead and do the research yourself. The Islamic Republic of Iran is poisonous to the people, and the people want them gone. The majority of the Iranian people want Islam gone. I mean, look at what it's yielded over the last 47 years. The only people that are supporting it are those who have assimilated, either out of fear or just ignorance, or those that are legitimate Islamic, followers, that even if they don't like the murderous nature of the current regime, but these are the same people that over the last 47 years have murdered over 1 million of their own people. Okay? Over 1 million of their own people. What more do you need? I mean, that's ridiculous. Nobody wants to talk about this, though. Everybody wants to, frame Israel as the aggressor when all they've ever done is defended themselves against these maniacs. To learn more about the prophecy I mentioned that fuels all this nonsense, I've got a video that I made that's in my videos, if you'd like to see it, where I lay out exactly what this 1,000-year-old prophecy entails. And then I made a companion video to that lists with sources the majority of the killings that have taken place under the Islamic Republic of Iran's leadership. They must go. It's time. If not now, it'll probably take another 47 years. But I hope that Trump has the balls to dig in and give the Iranian people what the majority of them are asking for. So we are 12 minutes away from when this blockade goes into effect. I'm going to go have a quick smoke, but I will be back for this because
proper
I'm
sewage
anxious
system.
to see how
These
it
are
goes.
artificial economies pumped up by the West, and they have suffered terribly over the last 40 days. They are not in a position to recover from what has happened so far, never mind future, in the next 4 or 5 years, I would say. It's not that their infrastructure is destroyed, but there will be no trust in investment in United Arab Emirates, in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia. All of these countries are now looking at China, apparently, for diversity. So we are looking at a serious economic situation in the region caused by an irrational war. There was no reason for this war. We want regime change in Iran as Iranians, but we want to do it ourselves. It can't be done by the barrel of the gun. It can't be done by plain bombing a country.
You want a regime change, but you want to do it yourself. Since you said that,
I am sorry
since
about
you said that,
echo.
may I ask you if you
That
do
should
agree
fix
that
that.
this regime has been pumping funds and emboldening terror organizations across the Middle East?
No, I don't think so. Its main terror is on its own people. The Hezbollah is an organization of its own. Whether we like it or not, it has its own population. It has its own independence. At times, it allies itself with Iran, but it has its own huge capitalist backers, many of them expatriate Lebanese. It's not just Iran that funds them. Hamas has had no major financial relations with Iran. No one can prove that. Hamas and Iran were completely in opposite sides in the Syrian civil war. They were supporting different sides.
Okay.
It is the lack of information about what is going on in the region that allows this myth created by media to keep saying Iran is paying for terrorists.
I'm sorry, but lack of information from who? Iran's regime currently gives information vetted by the regime. There is no independent information coming out of Iran. You know, citizens of Iran are gagged.
I have opposed the Iranian government for 47 years, right? Since the day it came to power. And many of us are opposed to the Iranian regime. But the current war has actually strengthened this government. That is our problem. It actually made it more powerful. We were succeeding.
How has it made it more powerful? Could you tell us what's the next plan? I'm sure you might not be privy.
It has made it more powerful because nationalism, when you have a president threatening the destruction of a civilization, you get not only Iranians, but Afghans, Tajiks, anyone associated with 2,500 years of civilization becoming very nationalist, becoming protector of Persian civilization. So we can't break that. We can't stop the nationalism that is now driving a lot of people to support this government, even though they didn't.
No, but even if they have people support, Ms. Yasmin, I highly doubt if they have military support. When I say military support, do they have enough ammunition? Have they not burnt most of it already? They may be they may be projecting victory because mere survival for Iran is victory right now. But do they really have the ammunition? What's their plan to fight off the United States along the Strait of Hormuz?
I doubt if they can win this war. I don't think anyone thinks they can win this war. Their ammunitions have been destroyed, there is no doubt. But to actually, if you like, bring about the end of a civilization, it's more depth. It requires more depth than just blowing things up. You can't destroy a civilization just by blowing it up. That civilization survives through culture, through education, through a sense of history and a sense of pride in that civilization.
Shashank Sareen, a last question to you on the Strait of Hormuz that has most of the oil passing through now is blocked off clearly. Iran never thought of the rest of the world. At least for India, Iran sees India as a friend. So we still got some ships moving. But now with America blocking off the Strait of Hormuz, how do you view this situation? Clearly, there is no care for the rest of the world and how we are doing. I'm not too sure if India should involve. Will we?
No. Let's face it. Iran is fighting for survival. It will do whatever it thinks it needs to do to fight for survival. As far as Hormuz is concerned, if Iran doesn't get you, America will get you. So we are all in a terrible spot. Number three, with all due respect to Yasmin, I completely appreciate what she's saying, but let's not talk about international law anymore. It doesn't exist. It probably never existed. It was used to wave and do some virtue signaling. It does not exist. The war was not fought according to international law. What Iran is doing on Hormuz is not international law. So let's not talk about international law. Number four, and this is the scary part. You know, all the dire prognostications that we have made, including by Mr. Bagga and me, that's actually the best case scenario. Because if this blockade of the Hormuz does not work, or if Iran was to start firing on American ships, the response from the American side could be devastating. Yes. And in retaliation, the Iranians will also hit back. And that means that the scale of destruction in this entire region will be something that this entire region and this entire economy and the global economy, which depends upon this region, I think that'll go for a toss. So that is what, and to be fair to Trump, allow me 30 seconds, to be fair to Trump, with all his obnoxiousness, with all his rudeness, with all his very silly kind of tweets which he does, and frankly, it was not just the Iranians and other people who were appalled by that threat to wipe out civilization. I think people like us were also appalled by it. But the fact is that Trump knows what will happen if the war restarts.
Because we know for a fact that the US blocking off the Strait of Hormuz will be far successful than all their ammunition that they've used on Iran so far. And this would not just, of course, adversely impact Iran. It is us, India, along with our neighboring countries, the Gulf, who we do business with, who's going to be bleeding the most. I thank our guests very much. That's all I have time for. Appreciate it. All right, shifting to our top story tonight, we're looking at violent protests that broke out in Noida's Phase 2 industrial area. Huge protests that really brought Noida to a grinding halt. We're going to tell you what really happened in Sector 60. Workers from multiple factories gathered at the Hoisery complex to demand a wage hike. What really began as a labor agitation over long-standing grievances about low pay and delayed wage revisions quickly escalated into large-scale unrest, with reports of stone pelting, arson, vandalism, several vehicles being torched, and the hours of chaos that people witnessed along traffic routes. In fact, it's already dense traffic along the DND Ashram roads. We saw nearly 2 to 3 hours of stalled traffic leading to Noida right from 11 a.m. this morning. In fact, much earlier. 9 a.m. is when the traffic. The unrest also reflects a broader structural issue where industrial wages in Uttar Pradesh, particularly in hubs like Noida, remain significantly lower than states such as Delhi, Haryana, Maharashtra and Karnataka.
Okay. There isn't much going on quite yet. I don't expect there to be some drastic change when this blockade goes into effect. But we are looking to see if any is, because it's certainly possible. But no matter where I go, it doesn't seem to be anybody really talking too much. Okay. Let's see what they're saying.
First, let's talk about the strategy Iran is engaging in.
Look at the price of oil coming
warfare
down.
Tactics. It is wearing down U.S. by mere survival, making the military confrontation longer than what Washington would like to engage in. Iran's enriched uranium remains a point of concern for the United States. The country's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, earlier claimed that
your credit cards are not one size fits all. Know exactly which card to use to earn the most rewards possible with the Cards Optimizer from Intuit Credit Karma. See your
of such a move is still being figured out by Washington. Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz is now being challenged by U.S. President Donald Trump. He has ordered a blockade of the strait, but choking the Strait of Hormuz also hits economies of Gulf's most powerful nations. Iran's navy may have suffered major losses, but it does not require much firepower to keep the threat alive in the Strait of Hormuz. One strike on a commercial vessel and the rest will stay put. Peter Kuznick is a professor of history and director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University. He is now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Professor Kuznick, it's good to see you, and thank you very much for making time for us. Let's begin with what has just happened moments ago, and the President of the United States has ordered a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. He says that the Navy will conduct demining operations in the Strait of Hormuz to clear the mines. First of all, your quick assessment of this decision by the President of the United States.
I think that the U.S. can blockade the Strait of Hormuz. You have to remember that a blockade is an act of war. That's why during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, President Kennedy ordered a blockade, but he called it a quarantine. So, but if the U.S. does blockade ships coming in and out of the Strait of Hormuz, oil and gas prices are going to skyrocket. Wait till the markets open tomorrow. We're going to see the effects. Stock markets are going to plunge.
That's a little bit late.
Prices are going to go up. It's going to increase inflation.
Yeah, you just gave away that you're late. Let's see. Pre-recorded, I should say.
Back on President Trump's criticism of the Vatican's appeals for peace as the pontiff kicks off a historic visit to Africa.
Oh, I could care less about the friggin' Pope.
Scheme in these protests. Everything was peaceful till late last night, yesterday. But in the morning when we were going to the office, we were told that the entire highway is choked and blocked because of the fact unruly demonstrations in Sector 2 and in Sector 16. And to say that it was absolutely spontaneous, there was nothing spontaneous about it. Of course, everybody's on the side of the world.
Pretty sure they are talking about news on their side of the world. So, now, the blockade is officially in effect. How is this going to unfold? It looks like the price of oil just plummeted a little. I say plummeted, it's less than $1, but it's still coming down.
U.S. Central Command says it will implement a blockade of all maritime traffic entering and exiting Iranian ports as it continues to set conditions for mine clearing operations in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the U.S. military says this blockade will equally impact vessels of all nations entering or departing these ports and coastal areas, including all Iranian ports on the Arabian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Now, prior to the U.S. and Israel's war against Iran, some 130 ships a day were passing through the strait. That strait carries roughly a fifth of the world's oil and gas flowing through there. U.S. Central Command says its forces will not impede freedom of navigation for vessels transiting through the Strait of Hormuz. That means, if you're going to and from non-Iranian ports, the U.S. already has 2 U.S. guided missile destroyers in the strait that CENTCOM says is, quote, setting conditions for clearing mines. Retired U.S. Navy Admiral James Stavridis told CNN on Sunday that he thinks the Pentagon would need 2 aircraft carrier strike groups and about a dozen surface ships outside of the Gulf to patrol the Strait of Hormuz at its entrances. In addition, the U.S. needs at least 6 destroyers inside the Gulf, partnered with navies of American allies to enforce the blockade. And former Navy leaders say at least 2 of those ships inside the strait will be needed to board vessels, with the other 4 defending against potential Iranian attempts to stop those actions. But Tracy, time will not be on the side of those conducting this blockade. Not only is it dangerous, we've talked about that before, but it also takes a lot of time to board and approach ships for transit. One official said that the two destroyers could possibly seize 6 ships a day between them, and experts have warned that it could take more than 2 years to get the hundreds of vessels stranded in the Gulf out of there. So for all of those looking at a 4 to 6 week timeline, this is not something you want to hear right now.
Yeah, Carla, you mentioned the mines in the Strait of Hormuz. How big of a concern is that in clearing those out?
It's a huge concern. And so even as this blockade is going on for vessels to and from Iranian ports, this is all assuming that the insurance companies and those owning those vessels will be willing to trust the U.S. blockade and to trust potential U.S. and allied escorts, because these mines can be very, very dangerous, and it doesn't take much. You just have to get one through that could really, gum up the system for everyone.
Yeah. Is there a workaround? I mean, is there a way to go around the Strait of Hormuz for these vessels?
Well, we know the Iranians know a route because they have sent that route to the Pakistani vessels and some Chinese vessels that have gotten through the strait. What we don't know is how much capability they still have. They still have a lot of mines. Can they quickly move them once they've been disabled? That is still yet to be determined.
Yeah, and of course, obviously, they're not happy about this. What is your concern, and what are they potentially threatening against the U.S.?
So they have threatened to keep the strait closed. They have been negotiating with the United States, and
they can't
the
do that
United
legally.
States had threatened on their end that the bombing would start again for the Iranians. So what's going to happen next is going to be critical for the U.S. military, because if they're going to be tasked with opening up the strait, in addition for planning additional military operations inside of Iran, that could be even more complex than what we've seen over the past 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah,
or 6 weeks.
Yeah, Carla, what about our NATO allies, like the UK? Are they going to be helping out in this effort?
They have said that they would help out in this effort, and I was talking, on background with some officials from the start who said they were caught off guard. They were normally when the United States goes to war, it consults its allies. The allies were not consulted, and so they were caught on the back foot. And so they did say they wanted help, but they wanted help once there was a peace established, once there was a ceasefire agreement. Getting involved with something like this in the middle of a war while there are missiles flying is very difficult and probably wouldn't work anyway, because, as I mentioned, the vessels are going to be too scared to transit. So now that we kind of have a ceasefire, there has been movement from the UK and others saying that they want to help. Also, some of the Gulf regions have also wanted to help, but the ceasefire is the key. We don't have one at this point, and so things are still very tenuous. We needed a ceasefire. We did not get one this weekend.
Yeah. Carla, there were talks of boots on the ground prior to the ceasefire. I know you're really tapped in. Are you hearing any rumblings now because everything kind of crumbled and fell apart?
Well, we know that there have been options that have been created and presented to the president. The problem with boots on the ground is it's incredibly dangerous. And right now, with 50,000 American forces in the Middle East, it's really not clear that that would be a strong enough force to hold any territory. You could maybe do some quick raids in and out, but not holding an island. That you would need a lot more ground forces. You'd need more Marines than you have there currently. We know that there are more Marines coming. The USS Boxer is en route with its amphibious ready group, but that's still a ways away. And even with 2 Marine expeditionary units, frankly, you would probably need more.
I'm just now seeing that Iran is threatening to close the Red Sea gateway using the Houthis in response to Trump's blockade. Iran's response to Trump's blockade of its ports threatened to close Bab el-Mandeb, the gateway to the Red Sea, using its Houthi proxy forces in Yemen. They're signaling they'll use their largest remaining proxy to cut off a completely different international shipping lane. This is the regime's playbook. When you block one choke point, they threaten another. When their navy gets obliterated, they hide behind proxies. When they can't fight directly, they use the Houthis as a shield. But here's what Iran doesn't seem to understand. The Houthis have already been decimated by the U.S. and Israeli strikes. They tried blocking the Red Sea before, and it didn't work then either. Iran can't hold the Strait of Hormuz, so now they're threatening to use a battered proxy to block the Red Sea. Desperation is not a strategy. If you ask me, the Houthis is another group that needs to be blown off of the map. We need to hunt them down and execute them in their sleep. Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, all of these fundamentalist idiots running on prophecy. 1,000-year-old prophecy is what drives these complete and utter pieces of human garbage. But I'm not going to get into that. I have ran my mouth about that nonsense for far too long. What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear them.
We have the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi in Beijing today, speaking to his counterpart there, discussing how Asia can support the Gulf nations. And again, we've seen conversations taking place today between Saudi Arabia and Tehran with regard to this development, with regard to President Trump ordering the U.S. Navy to step in and create a U.S. blockade. So a very much tricky situation we find ourselves in. Major standoff currently
look at Bitcoin jumping
in the Gulf War, taking place in the Gulf waterways right now. So only time can tell really here.
And do you think, will neutral stripping continue through the Strait of Hormuz, vessels that are not connected to the conflict? And
no.
How is this impacting the global maritime traffic overall?
It's all coming to a halt.
Yeah, absolutely not. There's not going to be any.
Well, guys, that's about all I've got today. I appreciate you coming. Do me a favor and hit the like button. I would really appreciate it. I will be back tomorrow morning. Hey, what's this? No, never mind. I'll be back tomorrow morning, as usual, around 7 a.m. for pre-market coffee and discussion on these events. And if anything goes down, anything of major importance, you can bet I will come back and I will be here live. I'm going to watch price of oil. Not sure what's driving this, but this drop. But this is, you would expect this to run up because of this blockade that is now in effect and has been since 10 a.m. Oh, fine. I'm going to listen a little bit more. I'm not quite done listening.
President Trump, good to see you, was saying that he doesn't care when Iran returns to the negotiating table after what happened over the weekend. Listen to this one.
Oh, I don't know. I don't care if they come back or not. If they don't come back, I'm fine. Their military is gone. Their missiles are largely depleted. The manufacturing capability for missiles and drones is largely defeated. We've been very nice. We haven't ripped down too many bridges. We did one only because they broke their word. They broke their promise. And remember, their promise was that they were going to open the Hormuz Strait. They didn't do it. They lied.
All right, Tony, want to get...
Well, that was highly contingent on us, wasn't it?
Fuel prices impact demand.
Revolution Medicines, what do you got for us?
Yes, that's ticker RVMD, have to bring a healthcare stock, surging about 39% to hit a record high. That's after the drug developer said a late-stage study of its pancreatic cancer treatment met several key goals. The drug nearly doubled the typical survival compared to chemo, which is the current standard of care. And I will say...
Also part of the region here, Israel continuing its bombardment of the Beirut and the south of the country. So really concerning how this will develop and whether the region will indeed, both wars here, fully erupt and paralyze the region further.
Fiona, thank you so much for bringing us right up to useful to have you on as always. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said today that whatever the pressure, Britain would not be dragged into the Iran war, nor will it be involved in a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz.
It's international waters. Better get your ass in gear.
Marshalling diplomatically, politically, and capability. We do have minds.
Yeah, well then get your ass to work.
Is correctly moving forward to put the pressure on the Iranian leadership.
Yeah, Tony, I want to stay with you. Pope Leo XIV, he is pushing back against President Trump, telling reporters that the Vatican's appeals for peace and reconciliation, that they are rooted in the gospel and that he does not fear the Trump administration. Let's take a listen to what he said earlier.
The message of the church, my message, the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers. I do not look at my role as being political, politician. don't want to get into a debate with him. I don't think that the message of the gospel is meant to be abused in the way that some people are doing. And I will continue to speak out loud against war, looking to promote peace, promoting dialogue and multilateral relationships among the states.
Well, I mean, that's his job, isn't it?
All right. And of course, really the Holy Father's role is sort of to be a mediator, a peacemaker. We know that's true. Tony, but we also know about this just war doctrine. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So there's essentially times within the faith, that you have to do things.
Honestly, I don't care what's going on with the Pope. I'm going to go over to Ion News, which is an Asian source. They seem to be kind of fair.
Guided missile destroyers passed through the strait on Saturday. This was the first transit by American ships during the war and a challenge to Iran's control of the waterway. The Iranian side, however, said that the US warships were forced to escape after they issued a warning. Following the collapse of US-Iran talks in Pakistan, Israel's army chief, Eyal Zamir, has ordered heightened readiness. Israeli forces have been asked to identify fresh targets and prepare strike packages. Iran's nuclear enrichment and the Strait of Hormuz blockade remain the main sticking points. Both the US and Iran declared that no common ground had been reached during the talks in Islamabad.
That's a shame.
Is there more diplomacy to come?
Probably
will the
not.
diplomatic needle still move? Or
Probably not.
will there be a full-blown war for the Strait of Hormuz?
Probably.
Bureau Report, WION. World is one.
I say we get this party started. Iran, you're not going to negotiate with these animals.
Questions. Joining us live from Washington, D.C. is Dr. Charles Kupchan.
Diplomacy would be nice, man, but it's realistically, you're not going to negotiate with these animals. You're just not. They've got prophecy driving them, for Christ's sake. Have you ever tried to kill an idea?
I don't find it surprising. I think it's worrying. Had there been at least some...
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, never mind. I thought Trump was
together. I think J.D. Vance and the Iranian delegation would have stayed and tried to continue talking. The fact that the talks ended early Sunday morning and everybody went home is worrying. It suggests frustration. It suggests that both sides saw no real chance of moving the ball forward. And so now we're back in a situation in which each side is threatening the other side. I don't think
pretty much. We know that, though, don't we?
Time frame, are we talking here?
Oh, I think it certainly does. I mean, we've had at least one carrier group based there. This is a floating city, a mini empire in naval terms. The number of ships, the number of weaponry, weapons aboard, even the number of Marines available to perform landings. It's worth remembering that only a couple of weeks ago there was speculation that the Americans might land those Marines on Karg Island, where some 90% of Iran's oil exports are loaded onto ships. That would have been a kinetic, a violent, and aggressive takeover of those oil exports, a crippling of those oil exports. It appears that Trump has opted for a less violent, less bloody alternative in the form of this blockade. So, yes, it has the assets in place. It's certainly something that a major blue water navy, such as that fielded by the Americans, has trained for and is prepared for. And naval blockades really are an institution of naval warfare going back centuries.
Absolutely. Dan Williams, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Dan Williams, he's a reporter for Bloomberg News. He's based in Jerusalem, giving us the latest reporting there on the blockade, which presumably began at 10 a.m. Eastern time right now.
Yeah, but it's still unclear how this blockade actually would work in practice, whether Washington is prepared to do everything it can in terms of enforcing it as well.
Yep.
These are all open-ended questions, and we'll be getting the reporting as it comes through. This is Bloomberg Intelligence. We're reporting live from the New Jersey Institute of Technology campus in...
Go over to some more Asian news sources.
Such ceasefires usually take considerable time to achieve. He also highlighted the contribution of Pakistan's leadership, including Field Marshal Asim Munir, in ensuring the success of the talks.
और पाकिस्तान को इस तरह अल्लाह ताला ने
Pakistan has played a key role as a mediator for global peace. We were given the opportunity to host and facilitate these important talks, and both delegations came to Pakistan at our request. I would like to thank United States President Donald Trump and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian for accepting our invitation and choosing dialogue over conflict.
Too bad it didn't get him anywhere.
Point there, Dr. Kapshan. Of course, this conflict has been marred by contradictions from the very beginning. And now, given the military build-up in the region, the string of threats, and also the lack of clearly defined cogent objectives from the very outset, do you think that escalation was perhaps always the more likely outcome here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The blockade is currently in effect.
Maximalist demands to perhaps corner Tehran into rejecting the deal altogether. Do you think that was the plan all along?
No, I don't. I think that, like many wars, once you start it, you lose control of where it goes. I do think that Donald Trump believed that this was a war that would last less than a week, that the Iranian regime was weak, that Iran's proxies in the region had been...
It looks like we're about to get an update from the Pentagon. I see that they've got cameras on. I have no idea when they're going to come and speak. It could be in just a few minutes. It could be, who knows. But they got the cameras on, so that's always a good sign that they're actually getting somewhere. But I would love an update. I don't know about you. I usually get off by now, but I am here to see what can be gleaned, if anything. See if they've got any new information. They don't even have the sound on yet. So, I will leave the sound on until they're ready to kick in. And meanwhile, we will continue watching this other news, or listening at least.
Iran's armed forces have declared that Gulf ports are either for everyone or for no one, calling the US blockade on Iranian ports illegal and amounting to piracy. Tehran warns that enemy-affiliated vessels are going to be banned from the Strait of Hormuz.
They can't do that. I mean, they can try.
We are joined now by our
Asia international waters.
Mustafa Afzalzadeh, reporting live from Tehran. It's always great to speak with you, Mustafa. As the CENTCOM deadline has now passed to restrict maritime traffic and for Iranian ports has now passed, how is Iran responding and what steps is Tehran expected to take next?
What's that? I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app. Impossible.
Nina can't code.
Can you repeat your question? I didn't get your question.
I can now.
Nice. So you're saying we can all build
apps now? The CENTCOM deadline to restrict maritime traffic to and from Iranian ports has now passed. How is Iran responding to that? And what steps is Tehran expected to take next?
Well, the experts here believe that the United States doesn't want to expand the war on Iran, and it's going to devote all and entire efforts of its military to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Three major CEOs of three major oil companies have warned United States about the consequences of the already in trouble world energy sector, and they don't want any new operations to endanger that more than it is now. Emmanuel Macron have described this operation as a defensive
buying and blackmailing
operation.
Their way toward
it means
a
that
nuclear weapon, so they thought.
All right, there we go.
No longer. Not on our watch. Other presidents marked time and kicked the can down the road. President Trump made history. From the strike that took out Qasem Soleimani, to tearing up the disastrous Obama-Iran deal, to the precision campaign that obliterated Iran's nuclear sites in Operation Midnight Hammer, to the decisive military victory we just achieved in Operation Epic Fury. No other president has shown the courage and resolve of this commander-in-chief. President Trump forged this moment. Iran begged for this ceasefire, and we all know it. As the President truth this morning, a big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. A capital V military victory. By any measure, Epic Fury decimated Iran's military and rendered it combat ineffective for years to come. You see, in less than 40 days, one of our combatant commands, Central Command, CENTCOM, using less than 10% of America's total combat power, dismantled one of the world's largest militaries. The world's leading state sponsor of terrorism proved utterly incapable of defending itself, its people, or its territory.
Not if you ask them.
We untied just a fraction of our
Not
strength,
that we should listen
and
to
Iran
them.
suffered a devastating military defeat.
Not devastating
Together
enough.
with our Israeli partners, America's military achieved every single objective, on plan, on schedule, exactly as laid out from day one. Iran's Navy is at the bottom of the sea, whether it's the Soleimani class, their frigate class, their prized drone aircraft carriers, submarines, mine layers, sunk. Iran's Air Force has been wiped out. Iran no longer has an air defense, any sort of a comprehensive air defense system. We own their skies. Their missile program is functionally destroyed. Launchers, production facilities, and existing stockpiles depleted and decimated. And almost completely ineffective. Iran shot hundreds and hundreds of missiles and one-way attack drones at our aircraft carrier. They were obsessed with it, and they never got even close. Every single one of those shots easily shot down miles and miles away from the Abe Lincoln. They were blowing ammo into Fantasyland. Contrast that with, most significantly, in last night's wave of more than 800 strikes, we finished completely destroying Iran's defense industrial base.
You might want to tell them
a core
that.
pillar of our mission objective. What little they have left, buried in bunkers, is all they will have. They can still shoot, we know that. Their command and control is so decimated they can't really talk and coordinate, so they still may shoot here and there, but that would be very, very unwise. But they can no longer build missiles, build rockets, build launchers, or build UAVs. Their factories have been razed to the ground.
Not the ones underground,
set back
in the mountains.
In historic fashion. You see, had Iran refused our terms, the next targets would have been their power plants, their bridges, and oil and energy infrastructure. Targets they could not defend and could not realistically rebuild. It would have taken them decades, and we were locked and loaded.
They tried to put a
They
human
couldn't
chain
defend
around
against it. President Trump had the power to cripple Iran's entire economy in minutes, but he chose mercy. He spared those targets because Iran accepted the ceasefire under overwhelming pressure. The new Iranian regime understood that a deal was far better than the fate that awaited them. This new regime just happened to look at what happened to their predecessors. Their top leadership was systematically eliminated. The previous Iranian supreme leader, dead.
Join Planet Fitness for 1 cent down, $15 a month. No commitment. Deal extended to April 16th.
Sorry.
For a long time, I've talked about backup power on this channel. I've covered how to determine how much backup power.
The Supreme National Security Council Secretary, dead.
Dead.
The Supreme Leader Office Advisor, dead.
Dead.
The Supreme Leader Military Office Chief, dead. The Defense Minister, no longer with us. The IRGC Commander, dead. The Armed Forces General Staff Commander, dead. The Intelligence Minister, dead. The IRGC Navy Commander, no longer here. The IRGC Intel Chief, dead. I skipped over a bunch, and I could go on and on and on, to include the so-called new Supreme Leader wounded and disfigured.
Good.
This new regime was out of options and out of time, so they cut a deal. They know this agreement means that they will never, ever possess a nuclear weapon. Under the terms, any nuclear material they should have will be removed. Any material, they should not have will be removed. Right now, their dust is deeply buried and watched 24/7 overhead. The president has been clear from the beginning, there will be no Iranian nuclear weapons. Period, full stop. Other presidents said it. President Trump did it. Operation Epic Fury. Less than 6 weeks, clear mission, decisive action, overwhelming firepower, America first, a historic battlefield victory. For decades, Iran killed Americans with roadside bombs in Iraq, using cowardly proxies to do their dirty work while they hid safely in Tehran. They struck our embassies with car bombs and attacked from the shadows, never daring to face us toe-to-toe. They thought they could bleed America with impunity. Well, they just learned the hard way what happens when you try to fight us directly. And even when they got lucky, one time in 40 days, and downed 2 of our pilots, they couldn't hold them. In a daring 14-hour rescue operation, 7 hours in daylight and 7 hours of night, both pilots were recovered safely. Not once, but twice. A daylight thunder run right up the middle of their country.
Das ist gut,
Boots on the ground. A midnight raid right up the middle of their country. Boots on the ground.
They're
0
incompetent.
American casualties. The Iranians humiliated and demoralized. We control their fate, not the other way around. That's why they came to the table.
I love the propaganda from all
Iran's
sides.
defeat
That's
is
so great.
America's retribution for every American lost to Iranian terror, especially those brave troops killed by Iranian-made roadside bombs in Iraq that my generation knows so well, and for the suffering their regime has inflicted around the world. Now we have a chance at real peace and a real deal. The War Department, for now, has done its part. We stand ready in the background to ensure Iran upholds every reasonable term. And as everyone knows, nobody makes a better deal than President Trump. To the warriors of Epic Fury, I say well done. You're the backbone of our country. Your skill, your bravery, and sheer guts and grit showed the world what America is all about. I'm proud of you. We're proud of you. President is proud of you. Job well done. But stay vigilant and stay ready. To the families of our fallen, your sacrifice was in service of a historic cause, and we will always remember your heroes, our heroes. We will continue to honor them. And to our Israeli allies, thank you for being a brave, capable, and willing ally on this battlefield. The rest of the world and the rest of our so-called allies saw what real capabilities look like. They should take some notes. Our troops, our American warriors, deserve the credit for this day. But God deserves all the glory. Tens of thousands of sorties, refuelings, and strikes carried out under the protection of divine providence. A massive effort with miraculous protection.
I'm about tired of this invocation of God.
44 Bravo spoke for all of us. God is good. The chairman will now provide an even deeper military detail on the historic success of Operation Epic Fury. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here. I want to start this morning by honoring the 13 members of our American Joint Force who were killed in action thus far during this operation. Their sacrifice and that of their families is deeply important to us, and we are grateful for each of them and will continue to mourn their loss. Their names and their bravery will never be forgotten. On February 28th, the President of the United States ordered the Joint Force to execute Operation Epic Fury with the direction to accomplish 3 distinct military objectives: destroy Iran's ballistic missile and drone capabilities, destroy the Iranian Navy, and destroy their defense industrial base to ensure that Iran cannot reconstitute the ability to project power outside their borders. Over the course of 38 days of major combat operation, the joint force achieved the military objectives as defined by the President. We welcome the ongoing ceasefire, and as the Secretary said, we hope that Iran chooses a lasting peace.
You don't know what an AI work management platform is? Yikes.
God damn it.
Here's 3 new AI-powered changes to the Monday platform.
But as Secretary Hegseth said, let us be clear, a ceasefire is a pause, and the joint force remains ready, if ordered or called upon, to resume combat operations with the same speed and precision as we've demonstrated over the last 38 days, and we hope that that is not the case. I want to congratulate and thank the leadership today at U.S. Central Command, including the Commander Admiral Brad Cooper, the Deputy Commander Lieutenant General Kevin Leahy, the Senior Enlisted Leader Fleet Master Chief Compton, and every one of the component commanders, senior enlisted leaders, and especially the staff down at U.S. Central Command, who does not get called out for any of the credit, but grinds 24/7 to help offer the options that we bring to the Secretary and the President. I also want to highlight the forces in the United States European Command under the command of Alexis Grinkowicz, who protected the western flank in support of CENTCOM. And I want to thank our partners across the intelligence community. Our ability to see and understand what an adversary is doing help us to be as decisive as we must be on the battlefield. And that includes DIA, NSA, NGA, the CIA, and the National Reconnaissance Office, and others. I want to thank the other combatant commands who have thus far contributed along the way to U.S. Central Command. This includes Transcom, Stratcom, Spacecom, SOCOM, and Cybercom, all of whom poured all in support of CENTCOM.
All right. I do believe that's going to be me. I have no desire to listen to the rest of this. They're just running their mouth about their accomplishments, which is great and all, but I've got things I've got to take care of. I appreciate everybody watching and hanging out with me today. Be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. right here. Love you in the mouth. Peace, love, and